It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, May the 28th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Greg Smith, back in the producer's chair. We're looking forward to speaking with you this morning on a topic of your choosing. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. Quick check-in at the Memorial Cup. And, of course, we got a couple of players playing for the Drummondville Voltigeurs, Riley Mercer and Matteo Rotandi. They've got a game this afternoon versus Moose Jaw. Must win. It looks like tomorrow's game between Saginaw and London will be for first place, but huge opportunity, huge game tonight this afternoon for Drummondville. I don't know if you're watching the French Open, of course, one of the great tennis tournaments on the calendar. So, a couple of things. So, 4 Canadians moved forward yesterday through the first round. Denis Shapovalov, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Bianca Andreescu, and Leila Fernandez. That's the good news. But it looks like yesterday probably the end of a clay court era. I just happened to flick on the television in time to see the last couple of points in the Sasha Zverev match versus 14-time champion Rafael Nadal. Rafa, some of those records are never going to be touched. So he's got 14 French Open titles. And yesterday really felt like a goodbye. He kind of couched it by saying he might be back, but it looks like it's over for Rafa. Wants to play in the Paris Olympics. But just think about it. 14 titles at one Grand Slam. So over the years, he's been there in 14 finals, won every single one. His record at the French Open is 112-4. He lost to Robin Soderling back in, I think it was 2009. Soderling played in back-to-back finals at the French. He lost to Novak Djokovic twice, and yesterday to the number 4 seed, Zverev. So probably the end of it for Rafa, but man, 14 titles at the one Grand Slam. Unbelievable. All right, congratulations to the folks out in Gander. Soon, in a few weeks, it's still a construction site at the moment, but it looks like their new turf field is going to be ready to go shortly. It's been in the works for some 4 years and apparently came in on budget. They probably even saved a few bucks to do some construction for washrooms and change rooms and the like, but it looks like it's got a terrific facility. And the hope there is not only to extend the season, but to maybe see more and more soccer players come out of the woodwork to play that sport. And so they'd like to be part of the provincial youth and senior league possibly in the future. And a turf field does give you a leg up, and it looks great. There's an 8-lane track field around the soccer field. There's a couple of grassy pitches alongside for some other summer activities. So congratulations. So let's see here. First announced in October 2020, price tag $6.6 million, and it came in very close to that budget. So congratulations. I guess one of the hiccups was they had a hard time figuring out how to drain the field, but it's now concluded, and a turf field, I think it's only the second one outside the Avalon Peninsula, so congratulations to those folks. Okay, you've probably heard me talk about this issue in the past. And I don't know what the majority or minority are on this one, but speed cameras. We know what the pilot project looked like last year over the course of 3 months in Paradise and Mount Pearl. And so Minister Studley yesterday announced that they are indeed going to tender to bring in some additional 10 cameras. Few things. We'll get into some of the nitty-gritty. But here's some stuff we've got to figure out before we get too worried about where they're going to be and what have you. First, so it's not going to take a picture inside the vehicle, simply going to take a picture of your rear license plate. The problem there is clear. If you drive around town, and most of these cameras are going to be located on the Avalon Peninsula, we're told, based on population density and some of the aggressive driving we see here. And of course it happens all around the country and all around the province, but it's the bloody license plate itself. How many license plates will you see today that are unreadable? All the paint is peeled off, and I don't know what happened there. Apparently we went to a company, I believe in Quebec, to produce those plates, and they were defective from the get-go. People have been encouraged to turn in their plate to get a new one that you can actually see, but you know as well as I do, driving around, there are tons of plates that are 100% unreadable. So that's going to be a problem for the government. What are they going to do? Are they going to put forward some sort of mandate that gives people 6 months to turn in their plate, to get a readable plate? Number one. Number two, how many people do you see driving around that have got some sort of translucent shield, piece of plexiglass or what have you, over the license plate? Some of them are absolutely transparent and you can see the numbers and the letters quite clearly. Some not so much. They're pretty opaque, and so consequently we probably can't capture those with a speed camera shot. So what's going to be the rule going forward there? Third, how many people who are going to get dinged, because there's not going to be warnings issued this year or whenever they come to pass, I think it's maybe late summer, early fall is the hope, for folks who don't pay their fines. So yes, as taxpayers, whether or not you have a vehicle, we're all chipping in on this. But you know the story as well as I do. There's something in the neighborhood of $50 million in outstanding fines. Not all of them are traffic related, so there's the three that we have to figure out right off the bat. The license plates you can't read, the shield over the license plate, and the outstanding fines. Now, back around 2015, there was even some thought of throwing people in jail if they didn't pay their fines. Then the current Liberals have kicked around the concept of creating some sort of program where you have to work off your fine. If you're unable to pay or you don't pay, you perform some sort of community service. Cleaning up the garbage, cleaning off graffiti, whatever the case may be. So we'll get to those. Also, this has proven to be a bit of a challenge in traffic court. Now, given the fact that we're going to tender to bring in a private vendor to install, to operate, to monitor, and to issue tickets, it will not be a case where the RNC have to be in the courtroom, in the traffic court all the time. They won't be there. The hope is that the vendor will be representing themselves in those courts. It has proven to be a challenge. So things like understanding how and when the cameras were last calibrated. People trying to compare time codes on their dash cam with the time code on their speed camera ticket, which initially is going to be on a paper copy. Then the thought is to move towards a digital copy with the email or your MyGov account. So, yeah, they're going to need legislation to be passed to allow this private vendor to do the aforementioned regarding these speed cameras. And, when you talk about the problems and the potential congestion in the courts and tickets to be tossed out, the overall hope here is to try to get people to slow down. I mean, the evidence is quite clear. When speed is under control, reduces the number of collisions and consequently injuries and death, because we see the headlines all the time. And people just drive too fast and too aggressively. And so there's going to be some pretty hefty tickets coming out the door. So there you go. Anyway, you want to take it on, we can do it. But we got to figure out that whole license plate issue right off the bat. I don't know what the percentage is of license plates out there that are unreadable, but it's significant enough to compromise this program. And so, yes, there's going to be warning signs. It's not a gotcha scenario. They're obliged by law to put up a sign saying you are entering a speed camera zone. And of course, the 10 don't have to be in the same spot forever and a day. There was brief mentions yesterday of Peacekeepers Way, Veterans Memorial, and I'm sure if you drive in and around the Northeast Avalon, you can name a dozen off the top of your head that could do with a speed camera. So the thought is maybe put a camera here for 6 months and then move it around possibly. But I seem to think it's a good idea. They're also talking about working with municipalities who want to install cameras, whether it be red light cameras, general speed cameras, and this is a good one. Also going to go down the path of putting speed cameras on the stop arms on school buses, because we know that that's a rampant problem as well. Do you want to take it on? We can do it. And speaking of the roads, any further thoughts on the fact that the government is going to go to tender for a 30-year contract with an independent vendor to build and maintain the additional twinning of the divided highway? I think that's a big one too. All right, and I believe this is also on Minister Studley's desk, and I think it's her department responsible, is the contractor registry. We spoke with Alexis Foster from the Canadian Home Builders Association, and of course there's renovations and construction happening year-round, but 'tis the season. So I just don't know where there would be a downside, and the registry is intended to bring in credible, reputable, insured contractors so that you as a consumer know what you're getting yourself into. If you go to the jobber, the unregistered contractor, there's a few risks. So, number one, they might be willing to do it cheaper, but they might indeed be fly-by-night. They take your deposit, they bang up a few shingles, they're gone, never to be seen again. Also, it's the thought that they probably are not covered by workers' comp. So, if they fall off your roof or they break their leg in the house, then you possibly are very likely are financially responsible. So let's see if we can get some update on the contractor registry. This work has already begun. Back when the government launched the residential construction rebate program, there was a temporary registry program in place for accredited, reputable contractors. So we'll see if we get an update there, because I think it just sounds like that's a real protection for me and you, to ensure things are done right and to be able to chase them if and when there's a problem, and of course to protect yourself financially. So we'll see if we can get to that as well. Also, plenty of reaction continued to come in overnight regarding the process, the optics, and the solemn nature of the repatriation of the remains of the unknown soldier from France, a member of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment. So still people want to talk about that in some form and fashion, and we can do exactly that. Okay. So based on information coming from the Chief Medical Examiner's Office via access to information request, looking at the number of drug-related deaths in 2023. 73 drug-related deaths across the province last year. That's a 97% increase from the 37 cases of accidental drug deaths in 2022. 51 in the Eastern Zone, 7 in Central, 10 in the Western Zone, 5 in Labrador Grenfell. The primary contributing drug here was cocaine. So here's what we see. Cocaine was the biggest killer, accounting for 34 deaths, followed by 13 deaths due to benzodiazepines, the benzos, 11 deaths from alcohol, and 9 from fentanyl. So, of course, the whole concept is, people will talk about education and awareness and what have you, and sure. And then there'll be all kinds of thoughts about more manpower and law enforcement to do more in the way of searches and seizures, what have you. The fact of the matter is, if you just look at it based on reality and historically, the war on drugs has been fruitless. It's never worked. And not to say that law enforcement should give up trying to catch the traffickers, because they absolutely should continue to do that work. But ultimately, it has not worked. So then you talk about some of the programs the government's put in place. And this one is kind of alarming, but when you look at the fact of the matter that there was a study from the University of Toronto back in 2023 saying that 1 in 4 deaths among young people in Canada in 2021 were opioid related. So that is an obvious, distinct problem, and the trend is extremely troubling or alarming, whatever the right word is there. So then they talk about naloxone kits. It's amazing that we've arrived in a place where some of these kits need to be offered and available in junior and senior high school. So the question is, what do we do about it? I think the government can, only acknowledge the fact that a 97% increase year over year is unbelievable. Just imagine if it's followed by another similar increase. We've got ourselves a real problem here. So there is going to be a review of mental health and addiction services at a variety of places based on times, discharge, reintegration into the community, those types of things. So it's $100,000 to look at the operations at the Grace Centre in Harbour Grace, the Recovery Centre in St. John's, the Hope Valley Youth Treatment Centre in Grand Falls, Windsor, and Humberwood out in Corner Brook. Then it's the concept floated around that maybe some people who are in the death spiral, the throes of addiction, may not be up to the level of competency required to acknowledge their problem and to request or to seek help. I get it. That's probably true. So then there's the reference to what people refer to as compassionate involuntary care, giving your loved ones, your family members, more authority legally over how your care is requested, and it's basically forcing you into rehab. When you stand back and look at it, it kind of makes sense, because if you are unable to evaluate your own condition and have a real cognitive approach to what's next in the form of help, if you want help, the problem is, for folks who don't want help, whether it's based on their competency level or not, it just doesn't seem to stick. It doesn't seem to work. Like most things in this world, if you don't understand and want the help to go get the help, then it's probably not going to be effective. So, but that trend is unbelievable. And imagine naloxone kits in the schools. Oh, it's also Early Childhood Educator Week, and so there's a lot of work to be done there. The government will continue to talk about the 9,400 spaces that are already in play for $10 a day of daycare, talk about another 2,000-ish that are in development. Of course, the most important numbers are net gain spaces, because if some have gone by the wayside, then 9,100 might not, or 9,400 might not be entirely accurate. So we've got to figure this out. Number one is, of course, the amount of pay. The critically important work is undeniable, because it's not just watching your kids bang around the daycare and giving them a juice box and a snack. We have to be doing some really actual early childhood education, which we do. So not only base pay, but the potential to be part of the provincial pension plan would probably be the issue that may indeed bring more into that profession. So Early Childhood Education Week, you want to take it on, we can do it. A couple of quickies before we get to you. So Greg Priddy, current president of the FFAW, has decided he's going to retire after more than 40 years with the union. So that's a long run in any entity or organization. So Mr. Priddy, he's going to retire, and we wish him a happy, healthy retirement. So we can take on the FFAW election. But a real interesting story that I only had a chance to give a first blush look this morning. People in this neck of the woods will be familiar with the work done by George Rose, right? He's a scientist who's been looking at northern cod for quite a long time, was here in the province at Munn for a long spell, but now he's working for the Institute for Oceans and Fisheries at the University of British Columbia, looking at the possibility of the return of a commercial fishery. You know, we've heard from Alberto Wareham at Icewater Foods out in Arnold's Cove about the catch rate, the exploitation rate, and to maybe be able to move from 2 to about 7, and the quota being around 25,000 metric tons. Mr. Rose, based on tagging some fish, has looked at the fact that they have now returned to the historical migration pattern. So I'd love to get George Rose on this program. I've spoken to Mr. Rose many times. Remember the book he put out simply called or titled Cod. So George is pretty encouraged that the stock is moving in the right direction. That said, he does think that there's a potential problem with looking at the new model that DFO has chosen. Of course, they've moved away from the data and the reference point beginning in 1982, and the reference point set there at 800,000 tons. The new reference point is data starting in 1954, and it's set at 315,000 tons. He thinks that there's maybe some concerns there because it doesn't mean any more fish are in the water. Then he, interestingly, looks at the impact of overfishing historically. It wasn't just about the exploitation rate, it's also the consequence that came with genetic changes and early maturation. And consequently, with fewer big fish, then, of course, just speaks to the obvious. And yes, we absolutely can indeed talk about the Senate report regarding the impact of seals and what they mean for the stock recovery. And the most interesting feature there was not only the demand for a policy to be implemented in the next 6 months, but it was, one of the recommendations was, if you are purposefully spreading lies and disinformation, you know, for instance, the baby seals haven't been taken since the 80s, but they continue to use the baby seal, and the red blood and the white ice has been really positive on their behalf, although positivity associated with distinct propaganda. So he says if you do that, you lose your tax-exempt status. That would probably bring that practice to a screeching halt. All right, how are we doing on the telephone, Greg? Last one, big story. So there was a pretty wild by-election just concluded in Bayberg, Green Bay. The three candidates, there were some interesting, if not confusing, and potentially controversial issues floating around. The end result, clear. A resounding, decisive victory for the PC candidate, Lynn Paddock. He won by over 3,000 votes, got 79% of the vote, period. And the voting turnout was pretty strong for by-election, 56.5. So congratulations to all the candidates, and specifically, congratulations to Mr. Paddock. So we look at the last three by-elections. Minister Houghton, flipped the Tory seat to a Liberal seat in Conception Bay, East Bell Island. Jim McKenna took the seat for the Tories in Fogo Island, Cape Friels. And now Mr. Paddock has done the same by taking a formerly held Liberal seat, Brian Moore. And as a matter of fact, this is the second time Mr. Paddock has run. He lost Moore last time in the general, but now he has won in this particular by-election. So that's two seats in the most two recent by-elections flipped from Liberal to Tory. So the makeup of the House of Assembly still has a 21 out of 40 majority for the Liberals. And so now the Tories move to 13 seats. The NDP still have 3 seats and 2 independent members of the House of Assembly, of course, Paul Lane and Eddie Joyce. So then it's the obvious thought. Well, will there be a fourth by-election this calendar year to see who will win the seat down in Waterford Valley? Of course, Tom Osborne has said he's going to retire after 28 years as an elected member of the House of Assembly. And so the Premier said it kind of looks like that. So it's the whole tap dance around whether or not there's going to be a general election. But if you stand back, the trend and some of the numbers, whether it be provincially or nationally, I'd be surprised if the Liberals call for a general election versus just go down the road of a fourth by-election to see who will take on Minister Osborne's seat. But congratulations to Lynn Paddock. That is a unbelievable victory here. He had 4,200 votes, 4,271 votes, and the Liberal candidate, Owen Burke, came in with just over 1,035, and NDP candidate Riley Harnett, 96 votes. All right, let's see what's happening on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. Stan's going to kick us off, talk about Blue Zone parking. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's begin on line number 1. Stan, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. Paddy, I'd like to talk about the Blue Zone parking at the health signs.
Sure.
Now, one thing, if you don't go there early enough in the morning, you're not going to get one. And now we got to pay there. We always had to pay there. But I got family members up in Nova Scotia, and they don't pay at the Blue Zones at the hospital. I understood there's meters up there, and there's no meters on the Blue Zones, so you don't pay. Now, I'm only going back 2 days now, and I'm paying $17 in 2 days. I'm on a fixed income, and I don't know how long that family member is going to be in there. Could be in there for a week, a couple more days. Could be one time she was there for 5 weeks. Now, that money I'm paying for the meter, for the parking area, I that's my gas money for the week. But I still got to pay for my gas, and I got to pay for parking in there. It's disgraceful. And I know Tom at the Hub has been fighting for this for years, and it seems like nothing can be done about it.
That's exactly the thought that popped in my mind, is that Mr. Badcock says that in his estimation, charging for parking is a contravention of the Canada Health Act because we're not supposed to be paying for so-called healthcare. Now, they've kind of said quite clearly that parking isn't part of the healthcare delivery system. Consequently, hospitals are allowed to charge. But your suggestion is that there be no parking fee specifically for Blue Zones, or you don't think there should be the requirement to pay for parking, period?
Yeah, Paddy, I've been going in there, over the years now. The wife's been in for different surgeries. And I've been there for 5 weeks. But now someone told me you can get free parking after, I think it's 2 weeks. You can go to a social worker, and they'll do paperwork, and you'll go to the parking authority, and you can get free parking. But 2 weeks, sure, I got well over $100 spent. Right now, if I'm there for 7 days, and I'm paying over $8 a day, $56, I won't burn that in gas going around town, which limited drive does, but I'm going to pay over $50 a week in there for parking.
Understood. Yeah,
And when you're a senior on a fixed income, we're talking about going to the store buying food, and you can afford to even do that. Now I got to pay all that kind of money, not just me. And if you don't go in there 8 o'clock in the morning, you won't get a Blue Zone. It's probably 40 or 50 in there, but I know everybody got the rights to use them. They got the permit to use them. And but why are they charging us for that? It's a money grab again, like everything else that's going on here.
Yeah, I've got a friend of the family who's actually in the hospital now. Looks like they're going to be in there the entire week. And so there would be the wife, the son, the daughter, and others who will be visiting every day this week, quite likely. They're going to be in the same boat. They're going to end up paying, probably a tank of gas worth of money for parking privileges at the hospital. I know where you're coming from. I get it.
Yeah. And, like I said, I talked to my family member in the mainland up in Nova Scotia last night. She said, that's disgraceful. She said, we don't have to pay up here. The Blue Zones, you're free at the hospitals. And I said, yeah, it's not down here, though. They got a company looking after the parking, and it's not the health signs getting the money, I don't think. Maybe he gets a percentage of it, but this company gets the money.
Yeah, the government gets the lion's share. They're paid a fee, straight-up contract fee. Fair enough. And, you just think about it. You say you got to get there early to get a Blue Zone. You got to get there early to get a parking spot, regardless of, like, if I have a...
I've been in there. I tell you, over the years, like I said, my wife's been there quite a few times. I've been in there going around. You got 15 minutes grace. If you can't find a spot, you can back the car to leave, right? I parked twice over in the Avalon Mall and got a cab over. Now, twice I've done that. Parked my car over in the Avalon Mall, got a cab over to the health signs, and then I was lucky enough to get a ride back. I did have to pay for a cab. But my car parked over there. No one's looking after my car over there. At least at the health signs, you got security there to a certain degree, right? It's just, I don't know. I've been there 8 o'clock in the morning, get a parking spot, and you're not allowed to visit, really, until 11. Now, you can go in there before that. You won't say anything, but 11 o'clock. And I've been sitting in my car for several hours because I had to go in there to get a parking spot. And if you're an old person like I am, if you go down in the overflow down there, you've got an awful long ways to walk. If you get a parking spot down there, and people are going around, look, you're going to have an accident there. They're going around, both ways. Everybody's trying to find a parking spot. It's just like an accident zone, an accident waiting to happen in there, going around trying to find a parking spot. But what I'm complaining about is having to park in a Blue Zone and pay for it. You shouldn't have to. Most people are in there because, a lot of cancer patients. And they're seniors, and they got to go and pay for parking to go in and get treatment.
Point taken.
Listen, it seems like the Premier might get a message now that we don't want the Liberals here anymore. the writing's on the wall for them and for Trudeau up there.
Well, of course.
They're never going to vote for me.
Yeah, I don't imagine either party is going to change the rules about paying for parking. I don't think. Well, certainly I've never heard anybody speak
I'm sick of the Liberals, the way they're getting on up there and down here.
Okay.
You know, I just fed up with them. And I don't care who comes knocking my door, a Liberal won't get my vote.
Fair enough.
But anyway, my main concern, Paddy, was phoning you. I just got in my head this morning to phone because I talked to my family member last night from Nova Scotia. Said we don't pay for it up here, so I'm going to give Paddy a call in the morning. I'm going to stir the pot a little bit again. I can't make it down talking about it, but if someone don't think about it, we're in the same boat. We're all going to pay $50-$60 a week for parking, plus your gas going back and forth.
How's your wife, Stan?
For someone that can afford to do both of it, right?
Fair enough. How's your wife doing?
Well, I don't know how long she's going to be in for. She's been there quite a few times, and it's just one of those things, day by day, and just see how it goes. And when you go in, like Sunday morning, I went in, and you go in the ER. Now, we're lucky it wasn't that many there. But when I came out Sunday night, you couldn't fit a person in there. There's that many people in there.
Right.
Hundreds, I would say. They're even out where he gets the blood work done, out there sat down. So if you go in there and you're late going in there, and like I said, people are in, like I said to one gentleman on the way out, I see him in the hallway, I said, at least, Skipper, you're in here. If you're in here, you're going to get looked after. But if you don't put you in the hallway, you're going to be either home or out in the room waiting. At least you're inside, and they look after you while you're in the hallway. I went through all that with my wife. But like I said, at least you're in there, and once you're inside the door, you'll get looked after. But if you're out in the room waiting, you're going to wait a long while.
I appreciate the time, Stan.
That's my beef for the day.
I understand. I appreciate your call, and say hello to your wife and wish her well for me.
Yeah, I you know, it took me years before I started phoning. I only started phoning when COVID started. I phoned you a few times complaining about trying to get an appointment to get my COVID shot, right?
Okay.
But since then, I've had to call with the fishery and that, and I'm not a fisherman like I told you before. But if anything gets in my head, I'm going to call from now on and complain about it.
You're more than welcome. I appreciate your time.
Like I told you before, and people have told you ahead of me, this program is the best in the world. You and your protege on the back there, you have that many people, and I'm happy to talk to you.
Well, I'm happy to speak with you this morning, Stan. So stay in touch, and I wish you and your family well.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, the parking, I remember when Tom Babcock was on that really forcefully, because his assertion was it's a contravention of the Canada Health Act. You know, I'll add to it. Anyone who's listened, who's ever been over in the middle of the day will say on the Health Sciences Complex, it is a bit of a zoo. People circling and circling and circling to try to come up with a parking spot. Add to it, it's an already congested area, the Health Sciences Complex at large. What's it going to be like when the mental health and addictions facility is opened and the new hostel is built? I know there is some additional parking, and people are probably loath to use some of the parking garages, which I think are supposed to be for the students, even though how many vehicles are parked at the Health Sciences, and it's someone walking across the parkway to go to Memorial. So there's a lot to it, but it's only going to get more and more congested. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, the Minister of Digital Government and Service NL, Sarah Studley. She's next in the queue, and then it's you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the programme. Just before we get to Minister Studley, apparently you don't have to pay for Blue Zone parking at the Miller Centre. That's interesting. And if that's the case there, why couldn't it be in other healthcare facilities? And secondly, apparently, if you're still listening, Stan, this is a message from one of the listeners. You can get free parking through parking services at the Health Sciences Complex. Or the Health Sciences Centre. They just need a note from the floor. They gave my family 20 passes at a time. I didn't even know that was a thing. Anyway, so there we go. Now you're up to date. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Liberal member from Mount Sion. She's the Minister of Digital Government and Service NL. And that's Sarah Studley. Good morning, Minister Studley. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Before we dig into the nitty-gritty of the speed cameras, right off the bat, you know, I heard you say that we're not taking a picture inside the cab of the vehicle, so it's not a person's face. It's simply taking a picture of the license plate. But there's so many license plates out there that cannot be read. The paint is peeled off. Is there going to be some sort of mandate put forward that gives people, 6 months to turn in their old plate? Because that's going to be a complicated problem.
So that's certainly an excellent concern. So it's currently illegal to have a plate that's unreadable, and you're actually not allowed, it's against the regulations to have kind of a clear or colored plate. Even the translucent plastic ones that go over your license plate, that's currently against the Highway Traffic Act. And when we did the pilot, with Mount Pro and Paradise, there was, obviously the camera takes a picture of the license plate, and then there was some software that ran from the vendor that, could read automatically the license plate. And so 86% in the pilot, 86% of the plates were readable. And then obviously there's an exception process where, someone manually goes and looks at the picture and says, okay, can I match this, yes or no? And obviously if the plate is not readable, then they wouldn't get a ticket. But it is, you have to be able to read your license plate. It's unlawful to have a license plate that's not readable. You can make an appointment or walk into a Service and L office, and if your plate is peeling or unreadable, and we'd be certainly happy to replace that for you at no charge. And we do have lovely Confederation 75 license plates at the moment, so that's a good opportunity to get a shiny new license plate with Confederation 75.
People also have these license plate, I don't know, they're brackets or holders that, whether it be from the dealer itself and or others, for your Toronto Maple Leafs or whatever the case may be, some of them are really quite big and they butt right up against the letters and the numbers. Is there any concern on that front? Because you might not be able to see things like whether or not it's even a provincial license plate.
So those also are not lawful. You're not supposed to cover your license plate in any way. I know most of them, don't obscure the license plate numbers, but, I would seriously consider, removing those. And it's important that people have clear license plates. And, you could be open to a fine or a ticket from law enforcement for having something on your license plate and having an obscured license plate. And,
of course, that would require law enforcement to spend time doing that, because I would imagine now if I get pulled over for speeding or what have you, I'm not getting a ticket for the peeled license plate. I'm getting a ticket for the speeding and being told to go get a new license plate, which we'll see whether or not there's an uptick on that, because there's, as well as I do, driving around, that's a pretty common sight to see. One, the plate covered by whether it be a translucent or opaque piece of plexiglass, and two, you can't read the period because all the paint has been chipped off. So on that front, before we move on to speed cameras, I believe we went to a license plate printer I think I recall it being the province of Quebec, and of course they're all defective. Was there any financial ramifications for the company that provided these plates?
So I have asked about that. So my understanding is there was one. So I guess firstly I'll say all the Atlantic Canadian provinces have a single license plate contract. So we have one vendor and they bid from all the Atlantic provinces. So we all get the same license plate. So there was 1 year, either in the late 90s or early 2000s, I don't have it in front of me, where we believe there was kind of a manufacturer's defect, but that is not an ongoing concern. I think part of our issue in Newfoundland and Labrador, just generally with license plates, is the salt and obviously our weather, and we use more of those corrosive materials on our roadways than some of the other provinces, which is why we see our license plate deteriorating faster. So there was 1 year where there was defective plates, I would say. Although we did, and that was a long time ago, and we did do some analysis, and I don't think the department was able to, prove any kind of fault or anything. But my understanding is that's not a concern right now. The slight, the deterioration you see on newer license plates is, with the corrosive materials used on our roadways.
So you can get a replacement plate free, but you do indeed have to present at the motor vehicle or a Service and L office. So, is there the possibility when I go to renew, and of course I can't renew without paying my outstanding fines, which we're going to get to in a second. So is there possibility for an additional checkbox on the renewal page that says I need a new plate, and you just send one out and I'll send mine back versus having to go to Mount Pro? Because for some people, they're not that close to some motor vehicle offices. Consequently, they know that they may be, breaking the law or the Highway Traffic Act, but they're not going to go in and get a new plate. So is there a way to streamline this?
So if someone, doesn't live near a government service center or a motor registration office, they can certainly call or email, and we will certainly make arrangements to help them get a new plate. That's not an issue. I don't think we want to proactively, mail them out, because then we don't get the old ones back. And so that poses another challenge, but We'd certainly work with anyone. We travel all across Newfoundland and Labrador for doing driver's licenses and renewals, and anywhere that there's no government service center, we can help you get what you need. So if that's a concern, people should, they could reach out to me or, send an email or call motor registration, and we will work with you to fix whatever it is that needs resolving.
So last year in the 3-month pilot project, Mount Pearl Paradise, the number of warnings were incredible. I mean, almost 94,000. And now this year, of course, there's going to be tickets, not warnings issued. Did it work last year like the municipalities worked with the province for the installation and the monitoring of the cameras and the issue of the warnings and then compiling the data, and versus what we're going to do this year, going to an independent vendor?
So we learned a lot from the pilot, and so I just want to thank the Town of Paradise and the City of Mount Pearl for partnering with us on the pilot. So in the pilot, we did have a vendor that put up the cameras at no cost, and they kind of donated the cameras and the signage as well. And then the municipalities sent out the warning letters in the mail. And so essentially one of the big takeaways from the pilot was that it was incredibly onerous for the municipalities. There were so many people going above the speed limit or going over 11 kilometers an hour over the speed limit in the pilot that the municipalities had to cap. I know one municipality capped, they would send out 50 notices a day just to the 50 highest speeders. And then they didn't have the capacity to send out other notices. So really, I guess part of designing the longer-term solution was how do we reduce the burden on municipalities? And also, what was very important to me is reducing or not having an additional burden on law enforcement. And so, looking across the country, mostly municipalities oversee speed cameras. And I guess in trying to be helpful to municipalities and having a provincial approach, we're going to go out with an RFP shortly where we're hoping a vendor or a collection of vendors can bid. I've heard from one organization overnight telling me that they're going to bid on the RFP. And so looking for a vendor to install the cameras, maintain the cameras, and as well, if someone appeals the ticket in traffic court, the vendor would go to traffic court and, I guess, defend the speed camera rather than, a law enforcement person having to do that. So we're really trying to reduce that administrative burden on the government and the municipality.
Yeah, and challenges will be about when was the last time the speed camera was calibrated, all that kind of stuff. People will be, I would think, very creative in challenging some of these tickets. So, and this one is a bit broad strokes. So we early blushed last year looking at the amount of warnings that were being issued. But it took until now to come up with going to tender to maybe see them installed by the end of summer. Is there a reason why there was a lag time between the conclusion of the pilot last year and now just getting to go out to the market?
That's a really fair question, Patty. I have been pushing for this all year. The provincial government is a big machine, and we were working diligently looking through many different types of options, really looking at what was the best, most efficient option for us. And I guess this is where we've landed, and, we've done a thorough review of, the impact on traffic court, and that's why we're starting with the 10 cameras, and we generally have a good idea of what a ramp-up could look like. And so I guess we really tried to take a careful, thoughtful approach. And given all the cogs, I know people think speed cameras, just put a camera up, but that's the easy part. The hard part is all the back end work that has to happen. And then the justice side as well, which, is not my wheelhouse, but we had to carefully consider the impacts to all of that. And I'm very pleased where we've landed today. Hopefully our Highway Traffic Act receives a third reading and royal assent shortly. And then we can go out and with this solution, not burden the law enforcement, work through established processes. We're also going to make the process of paying for a ticket online easier. And there's a lot of other improvements that we have in mind. I think we're very comfortable where we are as a starting point to reduce speeds from a public safety perspective without disrupting our system. So I guess and it's taken this long to get there, but I would have loved to have been here sooner, but I'm pleased we're here now.
A couple of quick things. I don't know where the risk might be here, but if we have an independent vendor, of course, would have access to motor vehicles database, how are we going to approach protection of information? Because information is power. So you talk about moving from paper tickets to maybe email. So once I see that Buddy driving an F-150 is getting a speed ticket, the possibility for that vendor to sell information, which is a pretty hot commodity these days. So now all of a sudden, I'm getting spam regarding accessories for my F-150. So how are we going to approach protection of, whether it be the storage and dissemination of information that this vendor will have access to?
Sure, that's very important. And so I guess there's two things there I'll touch on. We would have a rock solid kind of contract with the vendor where under no way they would be able to sell that information. And we would only, so what we did for the pilot is we had an agreement in place with the vendor, and we did review that with the Privacy Commissioner's office, and we will continue to review this program with their office as well. And so we would only be transferring data to the vendor based on who was speeding. So they don't have unlimited access to all of our data. It's kind of a, these are the license plates, and then we provide additional contact information, for example, and enough information that they'll need to issue a ticket. And we'll have the vendor will not be able to sell that information. That just will not be allowed in the contract. And that's incredibly important because, as you mentioned, that's completely inappropriate. And then I guess the second piece you mentioned is about the the e-tickets.
Yeah.
So to start, we're not starting with electronic tickets. The Act, we changed the Provincial Offences Act to allow that in the future. And so we still have some work to do to have a thorough program. And once we're ready to start issuing electronic tickets, we'll come out publicly with more, robust a program of how that's going to work. We have a lot of things to figure out for that yet, and so I don't want to wait for that to happen for speed cameras. So speed cameras will start. My expectation is with a paper ticket in the mail.
Why are we not including school bus stop arm cameras, red light cameras, all in the one fell swoop? Because it would be very similar technology, very similar back end work.
So we are progressing those at the same time. I will say, just in the thinking about speed and getting speed of implementation, not speed of vehicles, but in order to get speed cameras on the road as fast as possible, which I'm really trying to do, we're going with 10. But separately, I've had discussions, with Minister Abbott for transportation infrastructure. They're all on board with getting cameras on school bus arms. And actually, Transport Canada have draft regulations right now where they're going to be making it mandatory for school bus manufacturers to have cameras in school buses and on school bus arms. So that's not final yet. It's not in Part 2 of the Gazette federally, but we do anticipate that is a change the federal government will be making, which I fully support. And so we are, though, looking at putting them on school bus arms. That's kind of different people involved, a few different, legal analysis, but we're doing that at the same time. I don't have a time when you'll see the first camera on a school bus arm, but we are working on that alongside with the 10 cameras.
Listener Jeff makes a really excellent point on Twitter. What about the bike racks? It makes all the sense in the world. A lot of the bike racks are on year-round, and maybe cover up the license plate in full, especially if there's a bike on the rack? Or is that just one of those issues that we're yet to fully understand? Because that's important. I mean, there's plenty of vehicles out with the bike rack on them.
That's an excellent suggestion, an excellent thing to bring up. Obviously, if the license plate is unreadable, the camera wouldn't be able to find anything. But that's a good point. I'll certainly take away. A
couple of very quick ones. Just to confirm, in other jurisdictions in the country, there's no insurance implication or demerit points. Same here?
So there's no demerit points because the ticket is going to the registered owner of the vehicle. There may be some insurance implications, but you're getting a real ticket. The registered owner of the vehicle is getting a ticket. It just doesn't impact your driving, your demerit points.
Outstanding fines. Your party was talking about community service for those who are unable to or unwilling to pay their outstanding fine. And there's some $50 million outstanding. Some of that might be for contraband, tobacco, or what have you, but a lot of it associated with breaking the Highway Traffic Act. So do we think that we're going to move forward with this community service angle? Because that's a lot of money out the door. All the taxpayers will be chipping in on this program, and those who are unwilling to pay, they just sort of sit back and kind of giggle because nothing ever happens.
So the collection of these fines, that's injustice and public safety. So I guess I will say that part of the reason why we've gone down this road is, you can't renew your vehicle unless you pay any outstanding fines. So all of our all of your law-abiding listeners, I'm sure, will pay their fines and renew their vehicle. That is something I know the Justice is working on in terms of how to get more people to pay their fines, and I'll defer that to my colleague, Minister Hogan.
Will we see any changes coming like other parts of the country where that plate is my plate? It doesn't stay with the car. That's a license plate that I'm issued is my plate for, I think, forever. Are we going to make that change? Because that may indeed curb some of the issues and ills that we also see associated with outstanding fines.
Absolutely. So that's in the works. So putting my government IT hat on, we have three big mainframe systems. First is the student loan. The second one is MCP, and the third is motor registration and funds admin. So we're tackling student loan first, and then we're going to MCP, and then we're going to the motor registration funds admin system. And once we redo kind of our big MRD system, that new system will be plate to owner. With the current system we have now, it's not feasible to do plate to owner as plate to car, but that will be, I certainly see that in the next, say, 5 or 6 years when we get the motor registration system transformation completed.
Last one, also inside your portfolio, Alexis Foster and the Canadian Home Builders Association talking about bringing back what was a temporary registry when the province had the residential construction rebate program in place. That's a good consumer protection model. Is this going to be something the government entertains? Because I think it's good for the contracting industry, good for me as a consumer.
So, entertaining, absolutely. I think I have a proposal in front of me from the Canadian Home Builders Association, and really what's top of mind for me is balancing consumer protection and red tape, because we, reduce red tape by not having it in the first place. So just trying to balance that, I look forward to future discussions with them, and, any simple, reasonable idea. I guess I also don't want to make my department much bigger and regulate, a new area of the province while adding red tape and making government bigger, right? So I guess I certainly welcome more discussions with them, and, an elegant, simple way we can improve customer, resident consumer protection while also not adding too much red tape, maybe a little bit, but not too much. I certainly welcome further discussions on that. Yeah,
it might even be as simple as a searchable database right on your own department's website. So I'm the person looking to get a deck put on the house, and I go and say, well, Johnny Associates are not on the list. Maybe I'll deal with a different contractor. Minister Sully, appreciate the time. We're off to the break, but thanks for doing this.
Thank you. But that is currently available today on the Canadian Home Builders Association website. You can go look for contractors registered with them today on their website. So I encourage anyone to do that.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Patty.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sarah Studley, Liberal member from Mount Sion, the Minister of Digital Government Service NL. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the Artistic Director of Harbour Voices. That's Andrea Rose. Good morning, Andrea. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thank you for having us. I'm one of 4 artistic directors, co-artistic directors, of an upcoming festival of singing traditions called Harbour Voices. And it's happening here in St. John's from June 29th to July 4th as one of the anchor events of Year of the Arts, and supported by Celebrate NL. So we're really, really excited about this upcoming festival. So can I share a few things with you, or you asked me? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can do whatever works for you. So is this a choral showcase or a competition, or what does it look like?
No, it's not a competition. It's a gathering of 1,400 singers from around the world who are coming together to share together, perform with each other and for each other. So throughout the week, we'll be at the convention center doing all sorts of workshops and cultural exchanges and things like that. And then every afternoon, we turn into concert mode. So every day, there's a series of concerts at 4 p.m. in different venues around the city. And every evening at 8 p.m., there's a series of concerts in different venues. One of the highlight concerts of the festival is our big gala concert at Mary Brown Center on July 2nd. And with that concert, we have our headliner, the amazing Jacob Collier, who's this 29-year-old British young, fantastic musician, arguably one of the finest musicians in the world today. And he's with us for 2 days as part of his world tour. So we're really excited about that gala concert. So there's a mixture of sort of internal things and then sort of the public-facing concerts.
Where are some of the participants coming from?
Okay, we've got international groups. The MADS group is coming from the Philippines. We have a group of 8 men coming from Ireland and Iceland. They're called Manam. We have the World Youth Choir, which is a group of 32 singers representing 28 countries from around the world. We've got people coming from Canada, such as the Inuksuit drum dancers from Nunavut, from the United States. We've got a lot of our provincial groups, our Pan-Labrador Youth Choir, group from Cornabrook, Silver and Voices, group from Gander, Beyond Youth. All of the St. John's choirs are pretty much involved, the Holy Heart Chamber Choir, Alumni Choir, Newman Sound, QVE, you name them. They're all involved with this festival. It's over 44 groups, and 28 concerts in total. So it's a huge event.
Well, and choral music is really quite popular here. I don't know how many registered choirs there are in this province. So people would know Newman Sound and QVE and Shalloway and the Geo Cosos and the Geo Vantis, I think they used to be called back in Mary Oakley's day. So can you give us an idea just how popular it is? Because I remember seeing a number and I was really shocked just how many choirs there were.
Yeah, well, from having traveled around the world, I was a previous artistic director of Festival 500. I don't know if you remember that festival we used to have years ago. And, Newfoundland and Labrador is truly a hotbed for being a singing culture and singing in groups, choirs or traditional groups, whatever the context is culturally, And, there are other countries around the world that I could name, like Latvia and Estonia and Finland, but Newfoundland and Labrador is quite unique in the world. And as a colleague of mine used to say, it obviously comes from cultural traditions being passed on through families and things like that, but it also comes from our school system where we've been nurtured. We've had very nurturing and really world-class music education going on in our school systems for years and years. So kind of a mix of that nature-nurture kind of thing. Yeah.
I know some families friends of the family, that they have their children in some of these big travel choirs. They're seeing the world. It's not just performing at St. Bon's in the atrium. They're actually traveling around the world. It's amazing stuff. It
really is. And like, for instance, one of the things during this festival is a lot of the groups are staying in MUN residences. So we've titled it the Singing Village, kind of along the style of the Olympic Village, right? This is the choral world is a huge world, and the experiences are amazing. But for our provincial choirs here to bring the caliber of groups that are coming in, and to have this in our own town on our own back doorsteps is truly amazing. So we really hope people will come out and go to the concerts and just enjoy the various cultural groups that are coming, representing and celebrating their own cultural traditions, as well as very fine professional choirs such as the MADS from the Philippines and Nathaniel Det Chorale, the gospel group from Canada. It's just an amazing array of cultural traditions as well as choral excellence.
I'm sure some of my friends who are listening now regret standing in the back row of the choir lip syncing.
Well, unfortunately, they may have been told to lip sync, or pantomime, I think is the word we used to use.
Very well. Yeah.
But I think those days are hopefully over, and most people are singing now in schools and community groups, and just for the joy and the amazing experience that singing in groups, like playing on sports teams or whatever sort of the collective gathering is a really important part of our human existence, isn't it?
I agree, 100%. And every time I see Susan Knight around, I always think I should talk to her about singing. Before we go, how can people find out information, locations, dates, and whether or not they have to pay for a ticket, that bit of info?
Okay, so all of the information is on our website, which is really easy, harborvoices.ca. The gala is at Mary Brown's, and tickets can be bought through there, and all of the other tickets information is on the website. There is one amazing final event for the festival. It's called the Harbor Sing, and it's a free, open event to all the public. we're going to be sort of taking over the downtown core, the pedestrian mall, and parts of the harbour front. And there'll be groups of singers stationed all over the place, and groups of audience members will be led around sort of on a walking tour of the downtown, led by these gigantic sea creature puppets like whales and puffins and seagulls and things like that. But that's an open event, but it's ticketed. So one would have to get a ticket through the Arts and Culture Centre, but it's all free. That's our final sort of hoopla for the ending of the festival, and we really would love for public to come down and just have fun with us that night. That's on July 4th, the final evening of the festival.
Wonderful. I appreciate the time, Andrea. Break a leg.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Andrea Rose, one of the co-artistic directors of Harbour Voices. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Pauline's there to talk about the disability benefit.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Pauline. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago on the situation with the disability corporations across the island, and the situation that we're having with any of us as employers who have a disabled person working with us. I think you have received a letter that Ms. Renouf from Stephenville received from Minister Goody Untitled. She said she sent it to you. So
I've seen it, yeah.
Figured that, yep. So you know exactly where I'm coming from. She has a son that is disabled and doesn't know where to go and what's going to happen after the end of June. And I guess there's another letter on the go that the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages from Minister Randy Boisneau. And that's also gone to Ms. Renouf. And it's basically saying what Minister Hutchins had said, that this all falls back in the lap of the provincial government because the funding that was provided 3 or 4 years ago was mainly because of the COVID situation, and now they're back to what they had, and they're supposed to have been making adjustments for that situation when the time arose. And obviously the provincial government didn't. So now we're in a situation where at the end of June, I have my young lady, I'll say, she's been with me for 17 years, who's saying, look, it's my paycheck and mom's old age pension that's helping us to survive. And if things don't change, and I mean, we're talking the end of June here, when I don't know if I'm going to have, and it's not only me, it's the employment corporations across the island and the contractors that they're dealing with, that if we don't have a decision before the end of June, every disabled person on this island is going to be out of work, and all the workers that work with them. And then on top of that, like in my circumstance, my contract would have to be given a notice with the government, because now I'm going to have to rebid that contract to hire somebody who's not going to work for less than $20 or $30, $25 an hour, because now I don't have a challenged person or a support worker.
So just to be clear, we're talking about on-the-job supports as opposed to employment support groups like Avalon Employment Incorporated, who are trying to help people get into the workforce, right?
We're doing both, because
okay.
I used to be in a situation I used to have with the Bay St. George Employment Corporation. I used to have, I think it was like 15, and they were disabled persons who had a support worker with them. I'm working with the Bonavista one right now, and so it's not just. So that's what we're talking about, is the corporations too, because I'm working with the corporations to put these people in the job force and in the workforce, right? Yeah,
so just let's set the stage for folks who maybe don't know exactly what's going on here. So the federal budget was $535 billion. And inside what they call the Labour Market Development Agreement and the transfer dollars, there's a reduction of, I think it's $625 million, I believe, nationally this year. And in this province, there's a reduction of $16.5 or $16.7 million. It still leaves about $142 million on the table. But some of that reduction is going to mean, like, for instance, at Avalon Employment, they're talking about they might have to cut their autism support program. Now, the province did say that they were going to provide a 6-month backstop, but that was only for the labour market transfer reduction numbers, not straight up for the on-the-job support numbers, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Not for the employment corporations. So we've got
Right.
all the employment corporations, like one in Stephenville, are at their wits' end. The one in Bonavista Vista doesn't know where to go because, I mean, in my case right now, I have 2 in Portabass. I have 1 in Bonavista Vista because I've cut back a lot. We used to have probably 25 that were disabled. Now we have 3. But it's the same situation for everybody right across the island, that if they don't have the funding to support the support worker, then we can't hire the disabled person without a support worker. Make
Right.
sense?
Yes, it does. Makes perfect sense.
And all they have is funding. All they have is funding till the end of June. So as of the end of June, every disabled person and those support people that are helping them to keep a job are all going to be out of work because there's no money coming from the provincial government to the employment corporation. And the thing is, they're saying it's federal, but it's not federal. Federal gave them the money, they just didn't allocate it where it's supposed to be allocated.
Right. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like the reduction here was substantial, but the impact certainly is. And so
Yeah.
where that's going to go, I guess, is that money provincially administered by which department?
That I couldn't tell you, but I know that the letter that came from the minister, Randy, who is the Minister of Employment Workforce Development, he gave Ms. Renouf several options, but they were basically listed towards the autism spectrum. You know, like there are groups there that will offer funding to help those people, but I'm not speaking about just the autism. Like
Understood.
our workers are not have autism, and Lisa, you know, the lady that we have working for us, is a wonderful young lady. But the thing is, you know, she's able, but she still needs a support worker, right?
Right.
And as of the end of this month, we don't know where we go because the support worker is saying right off the bat, he's saying, remember I told you that they were only making about 20 cents more than the actual challenged person because the government did not allow in the contract with the corporations for the minimum wage increases either. So now we've got support people that are basically making 30, 40 cents an hour above the person that they're helping.
Yeah, it's convoluted. And, you know, when we talk about this, there's so many different tangents we can take here. So we know that there's some required supports to get into the workforce. We know there's required supports for support workers. And then even if you just bring it to, say, for instance, the Food Bank Canada report this week, and basically I'll call it a poverty report, people in the disabled community or the disability community are overrepresented in the food insecurity numbers. So this just gets bigger than having a job and things to do and meaningful employment. It has direct implications on whether or not they're going to be further represented in these poverty numbers, whether it be food insecurity or otherwise. So this is a big issue.
Oh, it's gotten to a point now. You know, I'm calling you from Edmonton, New Brunswick right now. I'm on my way back home, but I've been following this all the way along. I mean, this is really important. I'm getting calls from my workers every day saying, what are we going to do at the end of June? What am I going to do at the end of June? And I can't answer it because I go back to the corporation. They're saying, look, we're not hearing anything from the provincial government. We don't know what we can do at the end of June. I mean, am I looking at more layoffs? But then if I look at layoffs, I'm looking at my contracts. In Portabass, my contract in Bonavista having to be put back on the block. Even though I'm in a contract till the end of next March, I'm going to have to give notice to the government saying, look, I don't have workers for this now. Where do I go from here? It's really, really an issue right now that needs to come right to the forefront now because we're going into June month.
Yep. We'll see if we can figure out exactly who the appropriate official is to speak to, because we're a month away from big decisions that have to be made. So leave it with me, Pauline. I'll dig in a little further and see exactly who I need to speak with, because we've had Randy Boissonneau on this program and he can offer all the suggestions he wants, but the reality is it's not going to impact positively
no, it's not.
so many people. So
I mean, I just read his letter, and it's only going to, you know, he's just saying, okay, there's this program for this, there's this program for this, there's this program for this. Those programs are not going to help the majority of these people that are challenged out there that are working in the workforce. Those programs are limited to certain categories, I guess. but it's not going to help the majority. Like, it will not help my people, for instance. And I know of a contractor in Corner Brook, it's not going to help his people. And that goes right across the island.
We'll do some follow-up. I appreciate the time this morning, Pauline. I'll try to figure out who I need to get on to get some questions answered.
And listen, you can give me a call back anytime if you need, if you find out anything.
Can do. Will do.
Okay.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, dear.
All right, bye-bye. All right, let's go and take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Well, Loretta Lewis is the board chair of the Buren Peninsula Healthcare Foundation and joins us on line number 2. Good morning, Loretta. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here. And thank you, VOCM Cares Foundation, for partnering with us. We have a radiothon taking place tomorrow, Wednesday, in Marystown at the Summer Games building from 1 to 5.
From 1 to 5, so it doesn't preempt this show. Good news. Loretta, before we get into some of the particulars here, it always is striking to me that in a province that we spend $4 billion on healthcare, we still have the absolute necessity for your healthcare foundation and for the ones operating here in the Eastern Zone and for the Janeway Foundation. You know, when you think about it in the big scheme of things, it's remarkable we need that kind of horsepower and volunteerism and effort on top of the $4 billion, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We can't stress it enough. I mean, we have a very active board. And over the years, I've been on this board for over 16 years, actually, and very proud to be chairperson and just the work that we do on the ground locally. I mean, big picture healthcare. I mean, it's great if we can get these items. However, there are so many things like a wish list that we go to our local Eastern Health with, and doctors and nurses and even the manager will come forward with a wish list, and then we begin fundraising. So, I mean, things like for what we're raising now out of this radiothon, the funds will go towards priority projects. So we will take our strategic plan for the year and look at, what is needed, what is prioritized, and then we become busy with fundraising. And, of course, the radiothon is one of the first big kickoffs because with so many community partners and people locally want to contribute, which is very positive and forwarding. Because, when you look at being a community partner, the money stays here. So it doesn't go elsewhere. So anyone on the Buren Peninsula who's donating, they know they're going to see the difference. And like, for instance, this radiothon, we're fundraising for a STATI wheelchair system for the Buren Peninsula Healthcare Center in Buren, protective care unit upgrades for U.S. Memorial in St. Lawrence, long-term care beds, and that ticket item's over $100,000 for Blue Crest Nursing Home in Grand Bank, and also patient comfort and care programs. Like, we have taken this to a ground level, and we're very proud as a board of directors. We're seeing more and more. We work with social workers, so providing gas cards and accommodation vouchers, for local chemotherapy when patients have to travel off the Buren Peninsula, and dialysis patients traveling for medical appointments.
So can you give us any of the specifics on the wish lists that you've been provided?
Those are the 4 items, the 5 majority, like prioritized items.
Okay.
But there's many other items on that list. Like when it comes up, it's all like there's smaller items. There could be up to 20 items. And then as we apply for grants also as part of our fundraising, like we there's different grants we can avail, especially when it comes to mental health and addictions. And so, we can put out training. One item is training for the fire department, $20,000 for mental health training. So, it stays here, but we do as a board go to vote and reconsider the list because these are needs that are important in our local area, which may differ from other foundations across the province.
Do you have a goal in mind, or is it just as much as possible you can raise?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. As much as possible. Last year, 2023, we raised 100.
Did we lose Loretta? Do we have a phone-related matter, Dave or Greg? Hello,
sorry, what was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. We cut out there. Now you're back. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yep. So 188,000 we raised last year. This year we're hoping our goal is to go over 200,000.
Terrific stuff. So it takes a big effort to put together even something like a radiothon. I know that Greg Smith here, working for VOCM and VOCM Cares, it's a big effort on our end, but we're pleased to be involved.
Oh, thank you. Craig has been great. He's been working with us for a few years, and it does take a lot of work, bringing together all the community, all the speakers. Like there's doctors going to be on, social workers, mayors, and we have to organize this whole day event from 1 to 5, and donations start to come in like as much as a month ago, and they will continue weeks after the radiothon tomorrow.
Yeah, it doesn't stop then. That's just one piece that people can see. So for folks who want to get involved, do you want to share some numbers or anything else like that this morning?
Sure. Yes, the number to call to pledge is 279-2126, 279-2126, of course, 709 area code. Or you can donate online, www.bphcf.ca/radiothon. And if you go on our Facebook page or our website, you'll see all this current information posted also.
I appreciate the time. Good luck with this tomorrow, Loretta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to VOCM Cares Foundation, and we look forward to speaking with Craig tomorrow.
On their behalf, I say you're welcome.
Thank you, and have a great day.
The very same to you. Thanks. Bye-bye. It's Loretta Lewis, the board chair at the Burin Peninsula Healthcare Foundation. I mean, just think about it. All the different healthcare foundations around the province and the amount of money they raise. Like, I mean, you just think about the Janeway Telethon on NTV. Brings in millions of dollars. And at the same time, the provincial budget, which is in and around $10 billion, $4 billion of it is on healthcare. So it's incredible when you think about the additional monies that need to be raised to satisfy wish lists, as Loretta describes them. So, and then, I think in the broader strokes, just imagine backing out the time, the effort, the accomplishments, and the achievements of the volunteer sector, period. I mean, the province would never be able to backstop it. Let's go ahead and take a break right on time. When we come back, we'll talk about mental health and the return of the unknown soldier and whatever you want to talk about right after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Bill. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How you doing?
Doing okay, sir. How about you?
Well, not doing too bad this morning. Not bad at all.
Good man. So, Bill, you and I have talked about mental health, in particular men's mental health over the years, but you have an event coming up. We'll dig into the event, and then we'll get into the concept or the conversation.
Absolutely. We've got our first inaugural an evening of men's mental health, Patty. It's the biggest, I guess, the first real spotlight on men's mental health in the province, and that's coming up on June 13th at the CLB Armory. We're going to be having a sit-down chicken breast dinner. We've got Dr. Robert Whitley coming down from McGill University. He's the foremost expert on men's mental health right now. He's written a book on issues with men and boys. He's got about 150 papers out there. He's going to talk a lot about the issues that are prevailing when it comes to men and the mental health area. We've got Dave D'Entremont is going to speak from a CEO perspective and how isolating that can be. We got Audrey Wade. She's going to speak. She lost her son to suicide. He was 19 just a few years ago. So she's going to tell a story from a mother's perspective. I'm going to say a few words about The Lonely Man, and I might even holler to guitar and play The Lonely Man song.
From your perspective, why do you think we should be talking about men's mental health? Not opposed to talk about female mental health, but there are some specifics that I think warrants a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, Patty, there's things we can. The reason we should be talking about men's mental health is because there's things we can be doing that we're not doing. Like, we need to target men, the socialization, how we brought our boys up and brought our men up to be strong and dominant and competitive and be a man, and all those mantras that we've had, they haven't served us very well. So what ends up happening now, while that doesn't cause, say, male depression and male mental illness, it certainly makes it worse because it delays men from getting help. The stigma is still very real, and it's causing a lot of issues. Not only in suicide. I mean, I just got the updated statistics for 2022, and we're still at 80% male in our province. In 2020, we had 82% male suicide rate. So that in itself is a good indicator of why we should be talking about men's mental health. But it goes further than that. Like, we're talking about issues with families. We're talking about domestic violence. We're talking about divorce. We're talking about kids that are in the home getting in a very stressful situation that we could be avoiding. So it's a prevailing issue that affects all of us. I'd like to say that we're doing really, really well with this. We're just starting to turn the corner. I've been talking about this for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And, we're just starting as a province to start to look at this. And, I'll give you an example. I was invited into a school a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me if I'd come in and do an informal session because, of course, I'm a mental health counselor as well, and I focus on men. And they asked me to come in and do an informal session with 16 of their senior boys. And I said, absolutely. I'd love to come in and have a chat with them. So I went in, and the first thing I put on the board, I said, be a man. I said, now what does that mean to you? And they all came back with the same mantras.
Yeah, man up,
strong.
machismo, all those types of things.
The same thing. Even one kid even said beating somebody up was the term. So, like, these kids are coming out of school into the real world in a month or so. We haven't done a lot of work with them through the school system to try and change that conversation. So that's why we need to talk about men's mental health. We need a large conversation change here. We need some awareness campaigns. We need to reach men that we don't know that we're reaching.
I remember specifically one email in particular the last time we spoke, Bill, which was a couple of years ago, at least at this point, and it was the complete inability for this particular emailer to grasp the concept, because he basically came back and said, why do you continually try to emasculate men? We're making everybody soft. It's not being soft to acknowledge you need some help. That's not soft at all.
No.
I mean, you wouldn't think twice if you played rec hockey and broke your ankle to go get some help. That's where we've just got to try to eliminate that concept of, if you are looking for support regarding your mental well-being as a man, that all of a sudden you're less than. All of a sudden you're the cuck. All of a sudden you're the beta. You can have the toughest guys in the world that make their living in the confines of the squared circle as boxers that might need some help. You can make your living doing something like being a professional ice hockey player and need some help. Doesn't mean that you're less than before. It doesn't mean you're not tough. It doesn't mean you're not a man. It doesn't mean that you can't be macho and brave and be a hunter. It means none of those things. So we've just got to eliminate it, because the point that you were making was this fellow who wrote me the note, and I was, kind of frustrated with it, and we had a little bit of a back and forth that wasn't saucy necessarily, but he was making your point perfectly, albeit not understanding the point, period. So, come on, boys, just knock it off. If the suicide rates are what they are, and we see the implication regarding the excellent points you made, divorce, domestic violence, just trouble inside the family unit, there's ways that we can think about this differently. I hope that we can all, be part of the solution as opposed to be the bystander and watching the problem be as pervasive as it is. Boys, lads, men, if you need some help, get some help. It doesn't make you any different than you were before. It just means that you're on the road to being healthier and better and more of a provider for your family, more of a good husband, more of a good father, more of a good friend, more of a good son.
Absolutely.
So,
and Patty, I was talking to these boys. I said, who exemplifies this set of standards that you're saying, be a man means? And of course, they came up with The Rock. So we went through the session, and by the end of the session, I'd redefined what I think needs to happen. I think we need to redefine what it means to be a man, and a real man gets help and can talk about his problems and is a leader for the family, emotionally and however else. But I said to the guys, now would it surprise you to know, and I circled The Rock's name, that this guy had mental health issues.
Yep.
So I said, we talked about, the toxic, and I don't like the term toxic masculinity, Patty. I'm not a fan of it. There's nothing wrong with being a man. There's nothing wrong with being masculine. But some of these traits are certainly out of control and can certainly be, viewed negatively. But I said, here's a guy that you said is absolutely strong, and he's a leader, and he's doing his own thing, and he's been successful. And he also came out and talked about his mental health.
Right.
He also said he had depression. He was in his parents' basement with $7 in his pocket at one point. So you can do both.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Guy's a football player, a professional wrestler, an action film star, and is willing to acknowledge that he needed help during his life, and he got it. And consequently, he's still there on the silver screen and at the WWE competitions, because if he didn't get the help, he might not be around to be that so-called man that people look up to. Anyway, Bill, it's a big, big, big conversation, and hopefully that seeps into the minds of some fellas listening to the show this morning, knowing full well they really need someone to talk to. And boys,
I do. And I switched my practice, Patty, my private practice, to be focused on men, because that's the change I want to see. And I want some drop-in counseling for men in the city. There's different things that we need. But with this event, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and they think we're targeting only men, and that couldn't be further from the truth. This event is for absolutely everybody. I mean, you and I have talked about the Lonely Man Project, but what a lot of people don't know is the Lonely Man Project actually came from 3 women. 3 women that approached me when I was running a soccer program for the kids at their school back in elementary school who were desperate for their men to get help. And their family, they were all ready to leave these guys. The kids were walking on eggshells in the house, and they were down slapping high fives and smiling and cheering on the kids coaching in my program. And they said, that's not the guy who's at home. That's not the guy we're living with. And they all said the same thing, that it couldn't be depression because he's really angry. And that's when it struck me. I was studying the counseling program at that point. I said, geez, we've never had a campaign to tell people that a hallmark of male depression is anger. So when you see somebody going crazy in a parking lot, you don't think, geez, he might be on his last straw. He might be really going through something. You think, what an arse. What's wrong with that guy? And, of course, it's not an excuse for bad behavior. A lot of guys, and me being included 20 years ago, didn't realize I had depression. So we need a campaign to tell guys, what does it look like? Right? What does it feel like? What's the impact? And once you know, it's up to you to get the help. Like I've had a couple of guys refer to me, Patty, that have been in marriage counseling. Marriage counseling isn't going so well. And I talked to him for about 5 minutes in session. And first, I say to him, have you been screened for depression? No. And sure enough, when they go get tested, they're severely depressed. Well, how is marriage counseling going to work when you're severely depressed and irritable and angry at the world, right? It can't work. So we need campaigns to get this out there, but it goes beyond the suicide, which is absolutely tragic. It goes into our everyday life. It could be at the hockey rink. It could be in the parking lot. It could be road rage, right? Angry men are all over the place. And much to your point, you need to get help. You don't need to be the face of it. I've gone out and I'm talking about it. There's other guys talking about it. If you're not comfortable talking about it, that's fine. Slip in through the back door. It's confidential. Get the help you need and come back out. Nobody needs to know you're getting help. Just get the help.
Yeah, nobody needs to be the poster boy. That's an excellent point. It doesn't have to be something that you have to scream from the mountaintops. It's there's no badge of honor coming from the public. It's all about you yourself. It's about your social circles. It's about your family. If you want to keep it private, do exactly that. The issue just summarily is just go get it. Period, boys. I mean, come on. Or men, or however you want to be referred to. Lads, it's out there. It might be difficult to navigate the system sometimes. You might have to wait. You might need to use some of the gap services that are available before you get the long-term access to mental health care, the continuity of care. But it's there for you, boys, and go get it. I use that word boys because that's just one of those vernaculars we throw around as old athletes, right? But anyway, men, you know what to do. Bill, give the folks the details where and when for the event one more time.
This is going to be on June 13th at the CLB Armory. It's going to be a great event, an inaugural event for the province. I'm really proud, and we're getting this off the ground and doing it. It's going to be from 6 till 10. You can go to my website at lonelyman.ca, and that'll take you to Eventbrite and get some tickets there. We're still selling some corporate tables as well. You can check out my website, BillJeffrey.com, if you're looking for some other help. But I'd like to see a lot of these organizations, and we've invited them all. So we've sent letters to a lot of organizations in the city, law enforcement, NLTA, government folks. We want everybody at the table, men, women, everybody. We need all hands on deck if we're going to really attack this thing. And what we need to move to is away from the crisis prevention and away from crisis and into prevention.
Yeah.
Because the longer we let this stuff go, the harder it is to come back. And what's happening with a lot of men because of the socialization is they're waiting so long that they've caused irreparable damage. They've lost their job. They're addicted to something. They're alcoholics. The wife is gone. Then they're looking for help. We need to get you out sooner, boys. We need to get you in, have a conversation. When you feel there's something wrong, then there's probably something wrong. But nothing changes if nothing changes.
Bill, did you mention price point for the tickets?
Price point, Patty, is $65. Okay. And that includes your sit-down meal and all the speakers. You know what? We're not. This is not what I'm calling a fundraiser. I heard the last caller there sounds, with BOCM Cares, that's excellent. This one is our first event. I'm just wanting to cover costs on this. I want to get this off the ground as an awareness event. So we're not looking to make a huge pile of money. This is going to help cover our costs to bring Dr. Whitley down and have the event as it is.
Yeah, fair enough. I just wanted to get the number out there for folks' consideration. Bill, good luck with the event. I appreciate the time. Stay in touch.
Patty, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
All the best to you. Take care. Okay. Here we go. It's a good one. It's an important topic, like it is in general terms. Mental illness, mental health, mental well-being, and we are completely open and up to those conversations on this program. Hopefully, and it's not about me, it's about you. It's about your willingness to talk about it. It's about you sharing your story. And hopefully what that will do, and the result will be, that folks will hear it and have a little quick look in the mirror, a little introspection, and realize, you know what, that sounds a lot like me, and maybe there's more I can do for myself, my family, my buddies, and the rest. Let's take a break. When we come back, the Return of the Unknown Soldier. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4, second one to the PC member for Terra Nova. That's Lloyd Parrott. Lloyd, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty. How are you doing today?
Best kind. How about you?
I'm as good as the weather, and it's a beautiful day out there.
And so now you've had some time to reflect about the experience in France and all the ceremonies and what have you regarding the repatriation and then the motorcade through different parts of the city and what have you. When you sit back, when you're in the middle of it, I'm sure it could be awe-inspiring and quite moving. How do you reflect?
That's a great question, Patty, and I've sat down over the last couple of days and tried to package it all up. And, the feeling when you're standing in Beaumont Hamel amongst veterans and certainly all the people that try to bring this together, and you see the raw emotion, it's really hard to package it all. And I think that's exactly what happens is you're proud, you're happy, you're sad. There's retrospect. You think about what those young men went through back then, and I would say this, it was the greatest honor in my entire lifetime. And I believe that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians really should reflect on Beaumont Hamel and the sacrifices that were made. And not just that war, obviously, but that's the one that stands out on Canada Day for sure. But, it's such a big deal, sacrifice that people made and unwittingly just, they volunteered to go and, they gave their today so we could have our tomorrow kind of thing. And it's been a whirlwind of emotions. And, even leading up to yesterday, I had to stand in the house and respond to the Premier's speech. We brought in four of the gentlemen that really deserve the bulk of the thank yous and gratitude for making this happen. Mr. Frank Sullivan and Berkeley Lawrence, Gerard Budden, Gary Brown, and certainly Rob Shea, who passed away last week, couldn't be there with us. But it's amazing how it all came together, but it's very important for us as a province and as a former nation to be able to pay tribute to the people that gave us the opportunities we have today. So it's been an amazing experience, Patty.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it, and I can only imagine. You can react to this if you like, but to me it was just really unfortunate that, and I'm not talking about representation inside the provincial or the federal delegation in France, it's really unfortunate that we've got just so many people unwilling or unable to just shelve the politics for just a second and acknowledge what we're trying to accomplish here. And that's representing the 800 lost with no known grave to be repatriated and symbolized by this one return. Because, I get it. People are angry and frustrated. But when we're talking about someone's birthday or this particular solemn ceremony or combination of ceremonies, I was hopeful we were just going to leave it to the side, the politics of it all, but it's unfortunate that some people just can't.
Patty, I'll be honest, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I never seen any politics while I was in France. As a matter of fact, I'll go as far as to say I was the only opposition member in the provincial legislature that was invited, and the Premier invited me personally because I was a veteran, and I was certainly treated as I was a big part of that team, and I have no issue saying that.
And that's why I said, it's not about the delegation and their presence in France. It's like, for instance, when I was trying to follow along and see what was happening, and it was, of course, a lot of people were posting on social media that were actually there in France. And 95% of the comments were all, political vitriol, as opposed to just, if you have nothing to say about the actual ceremonies themselves, just kind of keep it to yourself. But we've arrived at a place
I totally agree. And BOCM had a question of the day, and I tell you, I was over there when I seen it, and I was disappointed at the response as to whether or not people would go to see or pay tribute to our son, our brother, a patriot who fought and died on our behalf so we could have a better future. And wars are a terrible thing, but there have been times in history when they've been necessary, and Newfoundlanders, Labradorians, have stood up to the plate, and they've sacrificed their lives so we could have a better day and a better life. And we owe them a debt of gratitude and a level of respect. Now, I will say, anyone who goes to Beaumont Hamel, anyone who ever has the experience to go there, I believe it should be mandatory for us to try and find a way to send our school children there, at a grade 8 or grade 9 level, so they can actually understand what the history looks like and feel the feeling they would have when they stood in the trenches of Beaumont Hamel. And again, I'll to quote, the ode, "Where once they stood, we stand." That feeling cannot be duplicated, and it would in an instant change people's minds once they've seen and understand, the level of sacrifice that happened. And I don't agree with war, Paddy. And as a veteran and former soldier, I've seen firsthand the consequences of it. But sometimes things are necessary. And at that point in our history, it was necessary. We would not be here today if not for those men that sacrificed their lives.
Yeah, it's a complicated question when it comes to that particular conflict, I think, because I'm pretty sure there was a lot of lack of knowledge about why we were there, what we were doing, how the members of the regiment were used as cannon fodder, which I don't think is unfair when you read the recorded history of exactly what went on. But that's kind of neither here nor there. I guess I'm glad you enjoyed the experience. I'm sure it's quite moving. I don't necessarily have a bucket list, but the Trail of the Caribou is something I'd like to experience personally at some point in my life, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do that. Anything else, Lloyd, before we say goodbye this morning?
Yeah, no, Paddy, I'd like to give a shout out to Lynn Paddock and welcome him into our caucus. He won Bayver Green Bay last night, and a resounding victory. And Lynn is a great guy, and he worked hard, and he deserved to win. And I look forward to and thank him for his service. But I look forward to having an opportunity to serve with him inside of the House of Legislation.
Yeah, second time successful, right? He ran against Brian Ward, lost in the last general. And as you say, a resounding, decisive victory. I mean, 79% of the vote. What I almost said is, that's Eddie Joyce kind of numbers.
Yeah, no, and the big thing about it is, we've just picked up 2 seats with Jim McKenna and Lynn, and both seats were held by former Liberal cabinet ministers, and they're big victories. Make no mistake about it, they weren't former PC seats. They've been Liberal seats for the last 10 years, and it speaks volumes to Lynn's and Jim's capabilities, and I'm proud to have the chance to serve with both of them.
Appreciate the time, Lloyd. Thank you.
All right, you take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Lloyd Parrott, MHA, PC MHA for Terranova. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the Mayor of Fogo Island. That's Andrew Shea. Mayor Shea, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you doing?
Best kind. How about you?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good, but I had some bad news I'm hearing now about the ferry system.
What's going on?
Well, we have the one that's on the north coast of Labrador, and she has to leave. She got a capacity probably over 100, 120, 130. And the provincial government is going to send down us a 30-car ferry until they get something else, and that's just not acceptable.
What else is actually available to replace the ferry that's out of service?
Well, the way it always worked was when our boat went off, the Legionnaire would come down because we have so many tractor trailers and that moving, and that would come down, and the Beaumont and the Flanders would do it. It would do Bell Island because that would basically give both islands the same capacity. But now we're hearing that they're only sending down one and leaving the Legionnaire and the Beaumont on Bell Island, which is about 100-car capacity. Yesterday I came on the ferry. And when she was unloading from Fogo Island, there was 5 tractor trailers. So that means when our freight trucks comes Wednesday morning, that's the day the freight comes to the island, the 5th truck won't get on down until 5 o'clock in the day. They'll be in the line up 7 o'clock. And then if live product like crab comes to the island, they'll be delayed again because the crab truck gets the priority. So the Beaumont can only take 2 tractor trailers, or the new one that Woodward's got is they're sending down, the Ashton or the Astron or whatever her name is. She got a 30-car capacity with the trailers. It's 2 cars. It's 15 cars with 2 trailers. So, and yesterday I'd say there was pretty close to 90 cars in the lineup. The Ashton, or the big boat from the north coast, was pretty well full yesterday with the capacity of from St. John's and Fogo Island. Basically fill the ferry with 1 tractor trailer. So this is not acceptable. We can't accept it. It's ludicrous.
So with that reduced capacity, is there any change to the schedule so that we don't have, the priority given to whether it be the crab truck versus people who are trying to get from Change Islands or back to the mainland or whatever? So has the schedule adjusted with the reduced capacity?
You can't reduce the capacity, see, Paddy, because it's basically 3 hours to make a trip. So the ferry makes as many trips as you can in a day.
Well, that's what I meant. Are they going load and go as more frequently than in the past? I guess was what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but load and go is basically what the schedule is. because she shuts down for an hour dinner time because the crew don't get paid, so they're off for dinner time. So that's an hour gone out of the day. But, Patty, we can't accept it. It's right in the busy time of our tourist industry. We got a major tourist industry here, a major fish plant that's booming. And now there's possibly one of the fish crab plants are going on strike, which means increased capacity needed probably for some of those trucks to come here. And they're going to send us a 30-car ferry, and one that can take two trucks and 15 cars. And you'll be in the lineup for a full day, and you won't get off down.
So the only option that would be satisfactory to you is for the Bell Island ferry to be out on your run.
Yes, and that's when she came here. That's what it was like. When our boat went off for long term, if she went off for a short time, she wouldn't. But if she went off for long term, then the Legionnaire would come down, and the Beaumont and the other one would take up Bell Island run. But now they're not doing it.
I guess the problem there is that there would not be two vessels available for Bell Island because of the fire on the Flanders, so they'd have the Beaumont Hamel only.
Yeah, no, that's not true.
What would they have?
Because the Woodwards has the new ferry that takes 30 cars, and that's the one they're sending down to us. They're not sending us down to Beaumont or the other one. But again, the two ferries don't work on Fogo Island because of the number of tractor trailers.
Okay.
We have a booming economy. We have a booming tourism industry, and this is going to kill us. And this is not acceptable. We got to say to the government, we cannot accept this. We can't accept it. You're putting us in a corner. It's just like, sending down something that's not suitable. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. They're looking at the numbers. Look at the numbers, and they know what they got to do. This is beyond belief that they would even consider it. Here's one of the only communities on the island that's booming, and basically taking away your ferry service because they're not giving you one boat. They're killing it. We can't tolerate it.
Understood. Is there some time frame for this refit?
No, because the problem is that this one that's on now, she got to go on the North Coast, so she's leaving to go on the North Coast. So the big one is leaving. They're sending down this one, so there's no time. Ours is up there since the last 4 months, and it's going to be there till the end of June doing repairs on her. And then when she comes back, she's going away again, from what I understand, for the winter for another 6 months. So they're all those two new ferries that we bought. They're junk, garbage, and they keep repairing them. One breaks down, the other one breaks down. So it's not our fault that you haven't got a ferry to put here. It's someone's responsibility to make sure. It's like if the Trans-Canada Highway closed and you open one-way traffic for the land of Newfoundland. That's what it's like to us. We got nothing now for starting, and apparently, looking at the map, it looks like the boat is on her way down. The one that's in St. John's, the new one that Woodward's got, the Ashton. She takes 30 cars, and with the tractor trailers, she takes 15. And this is not acceptable. I'd like for the Minister of Transportation to call me and probably to call Open Line and explain what the rationale for doing such a stupid thing.
We're happy to invite the Minister on as well to see if he'd like to answer that particular question on this show. Anything else before I get to the news this morning, Mayor Shea?
No, it's just, Patty, like we've been working for years working at this, building up a tourism industry. We got 3 plants that's working. We got people brought in from overseas working here. And then, to cut the feet right out from under you, that's what it's doing. It's chopping the legs right out from under the tourist industry and the fishing industry here in Fogo Island. And it's not acceptable.
Appreciate the time. We'll ask the Minister to come on and explain it to us, and if not, hopefully goes and calls you to explain it to you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, goodbye. This is Andrew Shea, the Mayor of Fogo Island. Let's take a break. When we come back, Clyde's here to talk about conditions on the Buran Peninsula. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Clyde, you're on the air.
How are you, Patty?
Top shelf today, you?
Oh, me too. I'm doing really good now here on Buran Peninsula now. Like I say, I'm local service district here in Rock Harbour. I'm the chairperson of that. And we're also, there's Lisa Slaney's up in phone your open line too. That's in Spanish Room, just over the hill, we call it. What I call it is we got the road coming from the main highway to Rock Harbour, which you come through Spanish Room, and it pertains 6 kilometers of road for 2 communities, right? And since I was talking to you now, I've been talking to MHA, Jeff Dwyer. He has taken it to task with a couple of petitions that we had there. He's been presenting them and talking to the Works and Service. So the last thing I heard now, Patty, is that we should soon hear something on it. So hopefully things will, at least we'll get a few spots fixed up where, where your culvert goes, the pleats goes across the road is all sunk down, they're gone, right? So hopefully they can, even if we get them patched up, put new pipes in, do it over, and it'll be good for a long time, right?
So what's the petition asking for in particular? Just some patchwork to be done?
Upgrade on the roads from Spanish Arm to Rock Harbor.
So, and it's just, you want a full repave done, or are you just looking for some patchwork?
Well, even if they done the real bad spots would be a help, Patty. I mean, it all needs to be done over, but you know how much that costs. But that's what we're looking for, more or less improvements, right, to what we got. There's, like I said, there's certain areas that needs to be really done bad, right? Like all over Newfoundland, Labrador, I guess. But
sure.
Right here, like I say, and like I said to you before, tourist season was starting, and we all love the Trans-Canada. That's not in too bad shape, but the tourists don't come here to drive the Trans-Canada. They come here to come see beautiful spots. Like I live in Rock Harbor and all the Bjorn Peninsula here on the Bjorn Peninsula and all over Newfoundland, because I love traveling my own self and going to all these little communities. It takes you right back to a simpler time. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I mean, given some of the restrictions during the pandemic, staycations were quite popular. We took a couple, and I went to communities I'd never seen before in my life, and it was amazing a couple of weeks that summer.
Yeah, I
lovely.
was down there in Peninsula, Patty, and I didn't know people were waving to me and that, so, we overall, we got a good friendly place to live, and like I say, we try to help each other at times, and like I say, you're never going to be perfect, but you got to try to get along, and like I say, Spanish Room Rock Harbor's come together on this, and we're, like I say, trying to get the road done between us, and hopefully things will work out. Just touching base, giving you a bit of an update on that.
I appreciate it, Clyde. Do you want to say anything else this morning?
Just that the mental health thing, Patty, it's a serious issue, especially with men and that, because I worked in the fishery for 22 years, and that was a bit of, how the fishery is. That was stressful. And then I took the scaffolding course. That's carpenters and same thing, right? We go around doing construction work, and that's taken me away a few times. And like I said, I don't want to be a wimp about it, like I say, be a man. But, I mean, it's hard on people. You know what I mean?
Of course,
you got to leave your family behind, and that's just the way it works here, especially on the Bjorn Peninsula. We haven't got much industry here, as a base, but we got a lot of people that men and women like to say congratulations to them on getting up every day and going away and coming back and doing your work, to make a living for your family.
Fair enough. Some days more difficult than others. Appreciate.
Yes, I just finished up in Voisey Bay myself, Patty. I was up there for almost a year. We had a good rotation. It was 2 and 2, so that was good. They fly you back and forth, and Voisey Bay is in remote camp. Once you go there, you're just in the camp, and you're there for 2 weeks, and you're not even around. You only do construction and the camp, So
yeah, a good buddy of mine is up there.
All right.
Good buddy of mine's up there.
Yeah, and it's a good place, safe place, and like I said, you wouldn't believe the money's coming in from that place, because every day from Monday to Friday, Patty, there's always flights. Like, there's different trades. So what we do is they rotate the trades. Like we were scaffolding and carpenters, so we traveled on a Friday, and the mine workers, I think they travel on a Tuesday, like that. You know what I mean? There's so much money going into that place, and combinate, there's good wages up there. From $40 an hour and up and stuff,
Oh, yeah, there's money to be made up there. I appreciate the time, Clyde. I'm going to get off to the break here now soon.
Yes, okay. You take care, Patty, and everybody else be safe. And like I say, like Badge just say, try to do something good for somebody, you'll feel better for it.
There you go, little Pat McAfee. Yeah. Good on you.
Yeah, I'm a bit cuckoo sometimes, but that's all right.
Sounds good to me, man. Stay in touch, Clyde.
Yeah, you take care. Bye.
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye. And Clyde made reference to the tourism season. And yes, we know that there's going to be quote-unquote unprecedented money spent on the roadwork this roadwork season. And, given the, what is it, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000 kilometers of roads here in the province, or just on the island. And it's certainly never going to be perfect, but we're all in agreement that it's pretty desperate. And he did mention tourism. There are a handful of folks, so maybe they're tourism operators, I'm not entirely sure, but we've heard the stories where, with the lack of rental cars and or the exorbitant cost of rental car, people are losing bookings that are a little further afield, say, for instance, from either St. John's or wherever they landed. So some of those folks are asking me why we don't pose this question to the government regarding rental cars. Is some sort of subsidy for the rental car industry? And the basic answer there is that even the Rental Car Association on a national front, they don't think that's the problem. It's the lack of access to vehicles, period. The manufacturers themselves have given distinct preference to their retailers because why? That's where the real money is, right? As opposed to the churn and the restocking of fleets or the circular fleets over the course of the rental car industry. So they're not even talking about government being a problem. They're talking about the manufacturers being a problem. They can't even get the cars. So when you don't have the cars, of course, that has an impact on the upward trend of price point. So that's the problem we have here is, it gets further complicated when we talk about the fact that we're on the island. If you had a rental car outlet in Edmonton and someone landed in Edmonton and drove to Jasper in a rental car, and then they were going from there on a bus tour or whatever, those rental cars, they call it a deadhead. They'd pay us $100 each to drive them back to Edmonton and put us on the bus to drive us back to Jasper. So it was easier to move the cars around, not so much here. And it's the shortage in conjunction with the price point. Let's take a break. When we come back, the member-elect elected in Bay Vert, Green Bay, is joining us. That's Lynn Paddock with a 79% of the vote last night, and I guess including the advanced polling, and actually really solid voter turnout. 56.5% of registered voters came out to vote, and of course Mr. Paddock is the successful candidate. He joins us after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to the member-elect in Bay Vert, Green Bay. That's Lynn Paddock. Lynn, you're on the air.
Thanks, Paddy. Thanks for inviting me to come on.
No problem. So, second time successfully lost in a very close vote to Brian Ward last time around in the general. And this isn't a comment aimed at you necessarily, but campaigning is a science. Either people run on name recognition and or the party is flying high in the polls and or they get down to the brass tacks and really learn how to campaign, which is not as simple as just banging on doors. So from the last time you ran to this time, anything particular that you learned from the last campaign that you think influenced this campaign?
I think we ran a good campaign the last time, but we didn't put a heavy focus on data collection. And we did this time to be able to get our vote out. And as you can tell from last night, I think we did a great job in getting our vote out. But, this time, an heavy focus to get to as many doors as possible. Last time, I think we got to about 80%. It was a challenge because of a winter election. And we ran a positive, open, informative, and engaging campaign. And I think we even engaged with a lot of youth in the community. So that was very important to me as well.
Interesting that you mentioned youth, and this is just an aside, but prompted by your mention of youth. There's currently a resolution going through the Canadian Senate talking about the voting age. Just very interested in many politicians' reflections on this. Do you think there's a need or a conversation to be had about lowering the voting age to 16?
Potentially. I think that's something that I think that's a discussion that we need to have in the province. I think we need to have that engagement in the high schools. A lot of the youth that I engaged with, they were discussing politics in elementary school. I was pretty amazed by that. But my first interest in politics was when I was in high school myself, and Peckford was standing up for Newfoundland and Labrador, and that planted a seed in me that has come to fruition now.
Yeah, Peckford, the boy from Green Bay himself. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so let's get into it. And look, number one, there was lots of yelling and screaming and consternation, calls for you to be removed from the ballot and all the rest of it. The one issue that I'm curious about is when you made the comments about doctors, and this has been bandied about a lot since you said it in front, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce. I'm just curious as to where you came up to the reference to doctors from Germany. I mean, if the numbers are, in the last 5 years, we've hired exactly 0 doctors from Germany, and the new play now for the 25 doctors that have been hired is that they all, regardless of where they're from, one's med school or across the country, around the world, all had to sign a 5-year return of service. So where did the reference to Germany come from? Can you help me understand that? Because that's long been confusing.
So Paddy, it's about not just recruiting, but retention. So yes, we're recruiting doctors, but we have been challenged with retention. So it's this is a matter of thinking outside the box of where we could potentially go, what we can potentially do. Like, I went through military college, so I was offered basically a scholarship, 5 years university for 9-year service. That's another tool that we could potentially use with our own med school to attract and keep doctors here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah. Would you agree that regardless of country of origin, that's why I think the requirement for 5-year return of service is going to be helpful, because if you're not from this province or you're not from Canada, the possibility for you to leave, which comes in a variety of forms, whether it be greener pastures, whether it be closer to communities of scale regarding your heritage or cultural background, whether or not your children like it here, whether or not your partner can get a job. There's a lot of reasons why people leave. So do you think it's just as likely that a doctor from Germany or Lebanon or Egypt or India or Pakistan or Britain might leave? Because there's a lot of variables that lead into that decision. Because I think the proof's in the pudding. Retention on the immigration side is complicated at the best of times, and even more so when you have the most mobile professionals in the world being doctors as part of the question. What do you think?
Yeah, agreed. So then we have to look at that. So what elements can be leveraged to keep people here? One of the things that we have as a comparative advantage for rural Newfoundland and Labrador is quality of life, safety and security, and I think every community that I was in the last month, there's people coming back from central Canada to rural Newfoundland and Labrador because of quality of life. So that's one thing that we can leverage, and sell Newfoundland and Labrador as a place not just to visit, but to live, grow, and raise a family.
It looks like it's been the case, specifically in healthcare, that rural Canada has a much different set of circumstances regarding recruitment, period. Before we even get to the retention conversation. So were those comments aimed directly at healthcare professionals, or are you talking about, the fact that I don't have to be in Singapore or Silicon Valley to be in the tech industry? I could do it from my laptop in a variety of smaller communities, regardless of where we're talking about, including this province.
Agreed. And, so then some of that, then we need the infrastructure to support that. So, most of the small communities in this district is challenged with cell service. So that, those are enablers that we need in place to be able to grow rural Newfoundland and Labrador. A lot of people want this way of life. There's people moving back now, building not just shacks, I would call them, but true chalets in a number of our rural towns. So, it's not just medical professionals, a lot of tech professionals, particularly because you just need access to internet and the like, and they can work really from anywhere.
This has been a chicken and the egg kind of stuff, but one of the distinct problems is not just access or proximity to healthcare, even though obviously that's important, is what are your thoughts about keeping young families? Because if there's not economies of scale and there's not the amenities that people are looking for, and the aged population comes with a variety of different concerns, healthcare being probably at the top of the list, So what would be some of the easy go-to, low-hanging fruit regarding keeping young families? Because that's the problem for rural Newfoundland. Because if there was the population there, it would be more attractive, even more so, for doctors or businesses. You know, you can add in cell phones and high-speed broadband and all the rest, but what's part of the play to keep young families in the smaller communities? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think you highlighted as to what comes first, chicken or the egg. Agreed. So, you know, there are a number of young families that I've seen, like in Perbixcove, a community of 30. There's now four kids. In Arbor Round, like I saw 3 or 4 young families. So it was interesting and engaging in discussions with them. And a lot of them wanted basically that freedom for their kids to grow the way that they did in their youth, to be able to play on the beach, freedom to do anything. What they will need is access to education. So I think that's the key path in being able to grow rural Newfoundland and Labrador, along with rural health care.
And I guess if we're talking about education and including daycare spots and what have you, it goes very much down a very similar path. Is for many teachers, I can't speak for all because I don't know every teacher. For teachers, doctors, nurses, LPNs, nurse practitioners, early childhood educators, it looks to me like they're choosing urban Canada versus rural Canada. So maybe it's, you know, identifying very specific incentives, which they've done inside the world of doctors to operate with a full patient roster in rural parts of the province. So it's fascinating stuff. Other than healthcare and some of the things we've just broached, what do you think is top of mind for the doors that you banged down and the people you spoke to, and you personally, when you finally get sworn in as a member? Where are you going to start?
Yeah, I'll start. The issues are massive, right? I mean, you know, this district generates significant GDP for the province. You know, we have a major fishing fleet in Lassie. You know, basically fishing impacts every community. And then we're on the verge, I think, some generational opportunities for mining, significant forestry operations on the Bayvert Peninsula, you know, expanding agriculture. And then we have an under-marketed potential in tourism. So, you know, there's significant GDP growth opportunities across the district. And then it comes back to some of the challenges. Some of the challenges is healthcare, roadworks. Let me touch on roadwork. We have significant safety issues now with a number of roads. Key thoroughfares, like 410. So the 410 is the Bayvert Highway, with significant, you know, fish, forestry, and mining all along that highway. So the government did the first 10 kilometers, brush cutting, which really opened things up from a safety and security. Then we need now, beyond that 10 kilometers, because it's 60 kilometers from the junction down to Bayvert, we critically need now, because the haulers are almost touching the road, and you get about, I would say, you know, the 3,000 residents down there, daily traffic across that. So we need critically now another 13 kilometers done on the Bayvert Highway.
Happen to know if that's in this year's play or where it falls in the 5-year plan?
Yeah, it's not in this year, so that's one of the first things I got to look at, Patty, is where it sits in the 5-year plan and how we go about moving it forward. You know, this is something that could slow mining, because, you know, I've been talking to some of the mining companies, and that's a challenge for them in moving forward with some of their projects, is the condition of Route 410.
Fair enough. This just popped in my mind, and this will be the last question before I get to the news. And it's real-life implications, because no one knows better than me that words have meaning, words are important, and whenever I stick my foot in it, I hear it all the time, just like you heard it on the campaign trail here. Dr. Todd Young from Springdale called, said that one of his students, when hearing your clip, said something along the lines of, he's talking about me. And so it had that personal impact on that particular student. And I would imagine many others in their community, whether it be from India and or Pakistan. So to those people who thought what you said was aimed right at them, and so consequently, the welcoming nature of the province was reduced or hampered by what you said. What do you say directly to that student?
What I say directly is I've worked with people across the globe. I was a senior military officer. I've lived across Canada. I've had neighbors across a number of different ethnicities. I have friends across multiple countries. And yes, we are a welcoming province. And I think those that know me know that I meant no ill will. And I think partially the election results reinforce that. I think, a lot was said by various people going into election night to try to sway votes one direction or another.
Well, and of course, that was always going to be the case. Lynn, I appreciate the time. Congratulations on your successful election. I wish you luck as a member of the House of Assembly.
Thanks, Patty. And I look forward to chatting in the future on really depressing challenges across our district.
Happy to do it. Stay in touch.
All right. Yeah, cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Lynn Paddock, the member-elect for Bayvert, Green Bay. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. All right, let's roll. Let's say good morning to the president of the Royal St. John's Regatta. That's Ashley Peach. Good morning, Ashley. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into the Confederation 75 supports and enhancements that the province is going to cooperate with, just curious about enrollment this year. For starters, do you have many men's crews that have registered to row the so-called short course?
Patty, I think the last time I checked, we do have one team that has expressed interest in rowing the senior men's short course, and I can't confirm yet if I've received their registration or not. But yes, there is certainly interest.
And then, of course, the question on the other side is, last year we had two women's crews row the long course. One was made up of some real veterans, and then there was another crew, a lot of really young rowers who put up an outstanding time. So do we have any numbers regarding women rowing the long course?
No, this year we do not, as of today, have anyone registered for the senior women's long course. I know some of the rowers who participated in both those crews are returning, but they are racing on the short course.
And basic question about registration. I still have a couple of buddies down there still rowing, and they talk about the pretty low numbers of men's crews. Can you give us a breakdown now for people who've actually paid the registration fee regarding women or girls versus men and boys?
Yeah, so when I checked it yesterday evening, we have, I believe, 65 crews registered in total thus far for the season. I don't have specific numbers on crew registration based on each race category, but certainly I would think there is about 12 men's crews registered across different age categories.
Do you and your committee talk about strategy there? Because I've heard various, suggestions over the years that you'd have like the minor hockey races, Mount Pearl versus CBS versus the Celtics versus the Caps and all that kind of stuff, or the Felians versus the Guards versus Holy Cross, whatever it takes to bring more men and boys into the sport. Is that part of the strategy for increasing participation?
Certainly, there are lots of different sports teams who are using fixed-seat rowing as a part of their cross-training for their respected sports throughout the summer. We, as a committee, are certainly open to any way that we can encourage anyone to participate in fixed-seat rowing. So with other teams coming down across from different sports, certainly every opportunity to grow fixed-seat rowing and share the love for fixed-seat rowing with others is certainly on top of everyone's mind.
What I can say, having done it just the one summer, it was entirely enjoyable. There was a real rowing community. You get the sense of that immediately. In addition to that, it's probably the most difficult physical challenge ever for me was rowing the long course. Now, it's not like I'm the most fit person on the face of the earth, but as a former old athlete, I thought I'd be able to pull it off, and I did. But my goodness, it was a monumental task. I was never happier than when we came through the finish, boys, at the end. Okay, let's get into what you wanted to talk about today. And that there's been a lot of nice work done down around Kitty Vitty Lake. You know, the medal presentation area right there by the boathouse is lovely, and other work that's been done. But for the 75 Confederation, I saw a picture of the medals. They're beautiful. What else is going on to accommodate this celebration this year?
Yeah, so we're excited for the rowers to have their commemorative Regatta Day, Race Day medals. And as well, we're certainly excited to have a concert for free on the North Bank, so at the bandstand. That's the side of the pond that is along the boulevard on Regatta Eve, so that's Tuesday, April 6th. So at 5:30 to 6:30, we have the Salt Beef Junkies. And then we welcome the Ennis Sisters to the bandstand. And then closing out the evening, we have the Irish Descendants. So it's certainly a great round of entertainment. Plus, we'll have like our concessionaires set up as well, those who are signing up for Regatta Eve. So it certainly will bring a great celebration to Confederation 75 for the 206th running of the Royal St. John's Regatta.
So,
go
ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a free shuttle that offered by Gulliver's Buses from the Confederation Building to Dominion there, Kingsbridge Road. So that will be 2 buses and an accessible bus. So it'll be a great opportunity for people to be able to access Kitty Vitty, like to take in all the festivities.
The name of the race themselves, you know, some of them are really quite cool based on tradition, you know, the mercantile race and the like. But have all the races been renamed this year for this celebration? Did I see that?
No, we are continuing to keep with the tradition of, as you had mentioned, like, for example, the mercantile race. But the whole regatta is called Confederation 75 Royal St. John's Regatta.
Very cool. Anything else you'd like us to know about the prelude into this year's running?
No, certainly. For everyone, the rowing crews have been taken to the pond over the past 5 weeks. Everyone is certainly delighted with the nice weather, especially this morning, and hopefully the ponds will stay in great conditions for this evening. But no, certainly everyone is putting their best effort forward training, and we'll be excited to show their success on Regatta Day.
On race day itself. I appreciate the time this morning, Ashley. Good luck this season.
Take care. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Ashley Peach, the president of the Royal St. John's Regatta. Oh, God, I should ask about registration fees. Kind of got caught up in 75 Confederation. All right, let's see here. Last check-in on the Twitter box before we get to our final break of the morning. We are VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, the mayor of CBS is Darren Bent. He wants to talk about a variety of matters. I think picking up on what Minister Studley had to say earlier today about speed cameras and the ability to work with municipalities if they want to get involved, because we don't yet know where the 10 cameras are going to go. There was reference to Veterans Memorial and Peacekeepers Way. And like I said off the top of the show, everybody listening could probably think of a dozen spots right off the top of their own head where the cameras could be effective. Let's take a break. Darren Bent next. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Saying morning to the mayor of CBS. That's Darren Bent. Mayor Bent, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
You guys called me, and I guess it was about speed radar. Is that right?
I was unaware. I didn't know how that relationship worked. But, you know, when we saw Paradise and Mount Pearl, the results were really quite clear. Now, folks probably saw the sign about here comes the speed camera and couldn't care less because they knew they weren't getting a fine. They were just getting a warning. But the numbers are big. I mean, almost 94,000. Minister Studley was on the show this morning. And we don't yet know where the 10 cameras are going to go. But I'm going to imagine on the Northeast Avalon in particular, virtually every municipality is going to want to get in on this, because one thing that we all share responsibility for is public safety, including road safety. So where's your head at looking at this particular issue?
Well, first of all, Patty, we had a police checkpoint done in a school zone, a 30-kilometer-hour school zone a couple of weeks ago, and they handed out 32 infractions in a short period of time in a elementary school zone. So the issue that everyone else has, we saw in Paradise and Mount Pearl, we see it in Conception Bay South, and I'm sure all the municipalities see the same thing. So where do we go from here? In the past, and continuing this year, we've spent tens of thousands of dollars on traffic calming in our town. Other municipalities are doing the same thing. There's speed humps, there's chicanes, there's all kind of radar feedback and all of that. But we're still seeing speeding. So a few months ago, after the information came out of the pilot project for the speed cameras, we reached out to the province and spoke to them about what's next and how can we possibly be involved. Is it something that's fit to eat? You know, is it going to be too expensive for us to get involved in? Is it something the province is going to do? All kinds of questions about how that would work. At that time, they didn't have very many answers. But of course, as we see now, they're moving to the next stage. We have been in contact with them again because we want to know how it will work in our community if it were to come to our community. And the province has jurisdiction over the main road, Route 60 through Topsail Road in Conception Bay South is provincial jurisdiction, and the Foxtrap Access Road. But mainly Route 60, we have 4 lanes in some areas, 2 lanes in others, and we have a number of school zones from one end to the other. It's where the traffic is in a big way. So, we reached out to them. We're curious. We want more answers as to how it will roll out, how it would work in municipalities. But we're definitely asking those questions along with everybody else.
Yeah, no, I guess part of the good news here is, unlike last year where the municipalities, with some support from the government, took on the lion's share of the work, that's not going to be the case here now. This third-party vendor is going to be responsible for the back-end stuff, which I think is welcome news for municipalities. And I don't know about cost because, I would imagine there's going to be some sort of cost recovery model proposal inside the RFP. I guess we'll all find out at the same time. But just as a general question regarding traffic calming, people will point to traffic circles, which are not well received in many quarters, even though they work everywhere else in the world. So for what you've tried, curb bump outs and speed bumps and radar feedback, for me, that's the most effective. That for me, anyway. When I see the feedback that I'm going 60 and a 50, that slows me down very quickly. But what have you seen to be the most effective?
Well, I don't know how effective any of it is other than, say, speed humps. And, of course, we get complaints about those as well. And look, Patty, this is not something we want to do. We don't want to be spending taxpayers' money trying to slow taxpayers down. That's to me, an ineffective use of taxpayers' dollars. We'd rather put them into more, things that would more benefit to the majority of people. But because of the speeds, we have to do it. And even the speed cameras is not a place we want to go. But I'm afraid, based on the feedback we've been getting from residents, it's something that we have to do. We have to have a serious look at it. But what's the most effective? I mean, even the traffic advisory people tell us that after a while, people just start ignoring the signs. After they become familiar with them, that they're not new anymore. They slow you down. That's great. The 30-kilometer speed limit in the school zone. The day after the police crackdown, one of the television stations came out, did an interview with us, and then took pictures of the speed feedback sign. I think the lowest speed I saw on their broadcast was 48 in a 30. So even the crackdown a day or two earlier didn't seem to have the effect. Is it because people become complacent? Is it because people's minds are in other things? All of this is true. And we feel that being preventative when it comes to these issues is the best way to go. We don't have, a huge number of accidents. We have accident areas like everywhere else does. But the truth is, one accident that claims a life is catastrophic and can't be fixed. So when I say to drivers and people in our community, please follow the speed limits. They're there for a reason. And if something were to happen that you can't fix, you've got to live with that. And the family that's affected has to live with that. And that's beyond tragedy. And we don't want to see that happen. So, the best and most effective way for traffic calming is for people to be educated and be mindful when they're driving that they're not just the only ones out there. There's a whole community of people out there. And if absolutely nothing goes wrong, no problem, I guess. But if one little thing goes wrong, it may be something you can't fix and you'll spend a lifetime regretting, and the family that has to deal with that tragedy will never be able to get over.
Yeah, interesting point you make about people getting used to things. Same thing in my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood with a neighborhood school. And one of the main roads around that school is pretty much a racetrack, just given how wide it is. People get suckered into speeding when the road is as wide as that particular road is. And my son said this to me. He said, look, they're putting in the speed bumps, so what's going to happen is the people will slow down for the bump and then speed up in between the bumps. And boy, lo and behold, I just was walking to the grocery store this a couple of weeks ago, and I just stopped for a few minutes to watch exactly that, and my God, he was right. People were choosing to speed between the bumps. Slow down for the bump, speed between the bumps. So you're right. People get used to it and they become numb to it, and off they go. Anyway, so we'll see how this all unfolds with the RFP and whether or not you get involved as your community. Last one before I let you go. So I did hear you pass comments about, I believe you were just outside the fence at the airport watching the military aircraft land, and I guess with the fighter jets accompanied it into St. John's International, and how it made you feel to be part of and watching this repatriation.
Well, Patty, it was incredibly emotional. The people there, and I was amazed when I drove in at the number of people lining the streets, and then we went out in the procession, and I followed the procession for a fair bit, and the people that had come out it was just an incredible sight. And look, we say lest we forget, but this was proof positive that we don't forget, that the symbol of this unknown soldier for all those families and all the families that have military people now, to know that there are people at work to make something like this happen and bring that young man's remains back to the home of Newfoundland, somewhere that he, along with many others, never got to do at that time. It was incredible, and I think of all the. I can't imagine the pain and the hurt that went through those families at that time, more than 100 years ago, and knowing that their son would never be home again. So many sons would never be home again, and here as a symbol, finally, we do have one of them back as a symbol for all of them, and it really, I think for us, it's really important to put back the tragedy of war to the forefront, to remember it's somewhere we don't ever want to go again if we can help it. It was really just incredible that the outpouring of support for this symbolic effort, and for our military. And I just want to say this, and I know it's come up before, that the Legion here in Conception Bay South, Branch 50, incredible group of people, incredible veterans, who were responsible for our Monument of Honor, which we're very, very proud of, for our Memorial Day service on July 1st, are moving that service, of course, and appropriately so, to the National War Memorial. Woodrow French, the president of our Legion, of course, a veteran himself, was part of the group that were at Beaumont Hamel and came back with the unknown soldier. And we're very proud to have that connection, and so many families in Conception Bay South and the communities here over the years have suffered great tragedy from war, and we are happy that our Legion was represented right on the front line through all this ceremony, and will be again on July 1st at the National War Memorial, and I plan to attend myself.
Same here. Appreciate the time this morning, Mayor Ben. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Take care now.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, that's Mayor Darren Bent on CBS. He had the last word, but we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Greg Smith, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the VOCM Big Land FM Radio Network. Stingray Radio Stations.
News as it happens on VOCM, VOCM.com, and at VOCM News on Twitter. Stay up to date with your VOCM. Follow VOCM News on
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.